But today we are an open access and free public debate forum. And we are convinced that democracy needs infrastructure, safe and open spaces to discuss and debate together and have a dialogue together. And with the Democracy Tower, how we like to call the prison tower now, we aim to enable such discussions and provide such an infrastructure for democracy. And to enable and facilitate discussions and dialogues on democracy, we also install different elements in the tower and ask 3 basic questions. Who is included in a democracy? How and by whom are topics being discussed in society and politics? And the 3rd question is, how do we decide together? And the whole installation and our work is based on the concept of democracy as a way of life. Democracy is not only dry and theoretical matter, but it's emotion and part of our everyday lives. It's also about sharing experiences, shared decision-making, and the principle that everybody is an expert on how we want to live peacefully in diverse societies. And so sharing experiences and developing ideas and tools of action together is also the goal of today's conference. We invited some panelists and speakers with different backgrounds from different countries. They will set the starting point for our discussions today. But of course, we have many more experts here with us. This is all of you, dear participants. You bring all a wide range of backgrounds and experiences to our Democracy Tower and to the conference. I'm really excited to share the ideas and with you and discuss with you how we can develop together tools to strengthen democracy through media engagement. So I will now pass the word to Stefanie Bosshard, who will speak a bit more about the program of today and the Swiss Democracy Foundation.
Thank you very much, Stefanie. Yes, I'm also Stefanie. I'm Stefanie Bosshard. I'm the Managing Director of the Swiss Democracy Foundation. And as you heard, our conference today is taking place in a very special, exciting place. We are fortunate to share the office with the Polit-Forum Bern. And also from my side and from our foundation side, a very warm welcome to the conference today. In our work, our foundation is committed to sustainable democracy promotion. And that's also our foundation's purpose, by the way. And our focal point on a national level is the promotion of democracy, education, and the democratic tradition to debate. And we also foster young initiatives in this area. On an international level, we are offering platforms for the discourse, for the resilience and the development of democracy. And that's actually what we do today. We are very happy to pre-celebrate with you all the International Democracy Day, which is upcoming on the 15th of September. Today we have a rich program ahead. Considering the background, the current background, we decided to focus today on media and its role in fostering democracy. And, very important, we don't want just to approach the topic on a meta level. Our aim is really to leave the day with concrete ideas on opportunities and solutions. So you will have to work. Everyone wants and needs to work today. So at the beginning of the program, we focus on the topic on a more global perspective. So the following discussion will be the following discussion on the state of democracy and democracy promotion will be embedded by the panel about the question what role media plays in democracy promotion. And then after a short coffee break, we start our work together on solutions and current challenge. This work will be done in the framework of a World Coffee with, for workshops, about which I will give more information after the coffee break. And then we close the conference with an interactive collection of practical advice and best practices out of the workshop. This is our program. Stefanie will give you some more organizational information.
Yes, just very briefly, I mentioned already that we have a live stream of the conference. The panels in the morning and also the one in the afternoon will be streamed. The World Cup won't be streamed. and the live stream will stay online after the conference as well. And also my colleague Milena Türcher, she will take some photos during the conference. So if anybody doesn't want to be photographed, please let her know directly so she can take this into consideration. Yes, for the World Cup Fest, there will be more information after the coffee break. So after the coffee break, you can just come here again to this plenary room, and you have a little number on your name tag, which we allocated you at random to the workshops in the morning. But over lunch break, you can actually choose a second topic, and then you can have a workshop that you chose, basically. And so the point to go to if you have any questions is the democracy bar in the room where you did the registration. This is also the room where we will serve the coffee breaks and the lunch, and after we did all the work, at the end of the day there will be a small apéro. So now I pass the word to you again, and then we do the reconstruction here on the stage.
Thank you very much. We will now start, and I'm glad to pass over the word to Bruno Kaufmann. Bruno Kaufmann is a broadcast journalist based in Sweden. Came a long way here. He's a member of the board of the Swiss Democracy Foundation and also of Democracy International, an organization which is also represented today with Daniela. And until last year, Bruno, you were also the co-president of the Global Forum on the Modern Direct Democracy, and I'm happy to pass the word. The stage is yours, Bruno.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefanie. Thank you very much, Stefanie. I'm very pleased to be here with you today on this second International Day of Democracy conference we are organizing here in the Polit-Forum, here in the Democracy Tower together. Also a very warm welcome from me for those who are here on site and also all those who are participating online from across the world. I would like to start by having us going back for a short moment to September 2008. 16 years ago. It's said that that was the time when democracy was most extended. It was stronger than ever before, and it was stronger than after. At this time also, the newly elected Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, he announced the first International Day of Democracy in 2008 on September 15. 16 years ago, the newly adopted Swiss Constitution was just entering primary school age, where in Article 54, the obligation to democracy support was established. But at that time, the question how to do it was not very much on the plate yet. There were no strategy, no guidelines. The social media, the smartphones, they were just born. In 2005, Facebook started, 2006, Twitter, 2007, the first iPhone came. It has been said, and maybe it's just a seemingly memory, that was a happier, more peaceful, and a more democratic time of world history. But, of course, we shouldn't blind ourselves too much and even allow ourselves to be blinded by these nice memories. I mean, 16 years ago at this time, in September, President Putin just had started his first war against a neighbor in Georgia. Just a few days, weeks after September, the financial crisis, the global financial crisis became the Great Recession. It was symbolized, for instance, by the breakdown of the banks in Iceland. But since then, since this September 2008, democracy had been and has been on retreat. Today, not the clear majority of people in a majority of countries lives in a democracy, but in autocracies. Today, we understand much better than 16 years ago the importance of concretizing and operationalizing this duty, as we have in the Swiss Constitution, to support democracy also internationally. It has become more of a political reality. And today we understand that media not automatically or by itself is a force and tool for democracy, but could also be a threat. So what have the crises and downturns of the last 16 years taught us, and how can we do better? That's the key question of today's International Day of Democracy, which we now start with a brief conversation with two very interesting people, Christine Löw from the Swiss Foreign Ministry and Staffan Lindberg from the University of Gothenburg. Please take the stage. Very welcome to the Democracy Tower.
Thank you.
Christine Löw, you are the Deputy Head of the Swiss Federal Department's Division for Peace and Human Rights. And I have seen that you have been the founding director of the UN Women Liaison Office in Geneva before, and also served as diplomat in the Directorate for International Law and the Swiss mission of the UN in New York. Very welcome.
Thank you.
Staffan Lindberg comes from my old hometown and my old university, Gothenburg, in Sweden. He is the director of the V-Dem Institute and also the principal investigator for the Varieties of Democracy project. Before you came to Gothenburg and after your PhD in Lund, in the south of Sweden, you teach at the University of Florida, but you were also the Parliament Fellow in Ghana. Very interesting. So I want to start with you, Staffan. Let's stay directly, because I mean, you are annually publishing the big democracy report. And in this year, in the 2024 report, you, for the first time since 2020, you didn't use the word autocratization in the title, but the word democracy. Winning or losing at the ballot, question mark. So what's going on? 5 minutes, Staffan.
Yes, thank you. Trends for democracy in the world in 5 minutes. Ready for a crash course, okay? Yeah, democracy winning and losing at the ballot, because we have seen in the last year and a half a number of important turnarounds at the ballot. First in places like Zambia that turned around and regained democracy lately, now also in Brazil and Poland. Well-known cases, and there are more. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at a graph here, our liberal democracy index goes from 0 to 1. Democracy has fallen back in the world. If you think of this as the level of democracy enjoyed by the average global citizen, right? Then we're back to 1985, the year when Gorbachev came into power. And if we take a financial perspective on this, it looks even worse. That graph illustrates something about how much democracy is losing out in the world in terms of financial power and how autocracies are gaining ground. This wave of autocratization is still the worst the world has seen ever in terms of number of countries, in terms of share of world population affected, any measure almost you can think of. And now 71% of the world population live in autocracies. That's up radically over the past 20 years. 60 countries are right now in change. 60. 42 of those are in autocratization. And the development over the last 50 years looks like this. So the blue line there is the number of countries democratizing in the world every year. And you see that there in the mid-1990s, we were happy, right? Well, you know, 70 countries were moving forward on democracy at the same time. And Frank Fukuyama wrote this famous book, The End of History. Liberal democracy has won, right? And then boom. And then you see that period, actually more than 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, the number of countries autocratizing start to go up. And you see that a line is increasing very rapidly. It's a little dent towards the end to 42, but we're still at record levels. And behind that figure is another 25 countries that have started to decline, but don't count as statistically significant change yet. But 25 more that potentially have started to autocratize. That would make it 1/3 of the countries in the world, almost. When they autocratize, the first thing that wannabe dictators attack is freedom of expression, especially the media. Because the media can speak about what they're doing and let people be mobilized. So that's very, very clear in all the data we have, 31 million data on democracy, by the way, that media and then civil society are the two things that wannabe dictators attack first. So therefore, this day, I think the way you have framed it here is really important.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. You were in 3 minutes. That's incredible. Yes, I mean, this, you said 30 million control points showing these trends, and these challenges are indeed enormous. And I want to go over now to Christine Löw from the Swiss Foreign Ministry. You are here also because now the Swiss government has adopted a strategy to deal with these global challenges explicitly and wants to make a positive difference. Maybe the question, why was this decision taken, is quite self-evident when you see this development. But also, what is interesting, of course, is that currently you are developing guidelines for action, not just to analyze, but also for action. And they are to be defined. Which are now these key fields and methods for the Swiss foreign democracy support in the years to come?
Thank you very much, Bruno.
And you have 7 minutes.
Excellent. And I'm going to catch the other two. Yes, no. So thank you very much, and thanks very much for inviting us here to be able to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do going forward. Let me begin by explaining why the Federal Council, the Swiss government, has identified democracy and governance as a new thematic priority of our current new foreign policy strategy, which is running from this year to 2027. One reason is certainly the geopolitical trends that Staffan just outlined, that there's no doubt about this. But I think it's also important to understand that democracy, of course, is a key component of Swiss identity or Swiss political identity. And Switzerland also has and had for a long time a constitutional mandate to support democracy in its foreign policy work. We also have a lot of experience in living and promoting democracy in our own complex history, where democratic processes and institutions have time and again been adapted to unite this diverse population that has also changed and evolved over time. And also for us, very important, when we look at these numbers, when we look at the world today, strengthening democratic values and freedoms further serves also Swiss interests globally, despite or precisely because of the restrictions on democratic freedoms. There is a strong desire for more participation and stronger democratic institutions in many societies. We can observe that, and we would like to grasp this momentum or this appetite. So given the current state of democracy and Swiss expertise in the field and the potential we have also with the existing foreign policy profile that Switzerland has, we wish to sharpen our profile in foreign policy on democracy with the aim of helping to reinforce democratic resilience worldwide. Again, this speaks to the numbers you said. You said many countries are evolving, changing, and so we are looking for the opportunities. Where is this tipping point, or which countries are moving in a direction which we think is not such an ideal one, or where data tells us this is going into the wrong direction, to see where are entry points where we can actually speak or find dialogue with those forces in countries that can help stop these trends and strengthen the democratic resilience. Switzerland's democratic system is often considered as a special case with its pronounced federalism and extensive direct democratic rights. But again, for us also we consider this also one of our competencies in a certain way, because this special case reflects a long process of adapting our democratic system to our unique challenges. This is why we firmly believe that one way, or the only way, to promote democracy is to support each other in identifying and develop tailor-made solutions, tailor-made democratic approaches, suitable to specific cultural, historical, and socio-economic circumstances. This to say, nothing is further to us than trying to sell the Swiss model or force our way we do democracy to any other society or other state. Now, to come to your question about the guidelines. So I mentioned the constitutional mandate, the Swiss foreign policy strategy. The guidelines are one of the mandates coming out of the foreign policy strategy, and we are in the midst of finalizing new democracy guidelines of the Swiss Department of Foreign Affairs. For this, we have also created a new team, democracy section in my division, in the Peace and Human Rights division of the State Secretariat of the Foreign Department, which is tasked to develop these guidelines together, of course, with other parts of the government that is also working on democracy. They will outline the goals and purposes of our work in this regard, but also to specify the instruments that we are going to apply. Perhaps we can you move for me? Thank you, that's excellent. Right. So the building you can see here on the slide is a snapshot of how we are conceptualizing the Swiss democracy promotion. Let me start with the foundation of the building here. Every democratic society is built upon the foundation of the respect for human rights and rule of law principles. The relationship between democracy, human rights, and the rule of law is complex. They are mutually reinforcing conditions, but can also limit each other and control each other at times. As an overall goal of our democracy promotion, we have identified the strengthening of democratic values, processes, and institutions, which you can see as the roof of the building. But to achieve this overall goal, Switzerland will focus on 2 fields of action, which are the pillars here. The first one, the one on the right, is the strengthening of institutional and societal framework conditions. It is vital to support the countervailing formal or informal institutions to support democracy, but also to enhance the skills and capacities necessary to participate meaningfully in a democracy. Switzerland will therefore continue its engagement to ensure that freedom of expression and the independence of media systems are respected, that elections are free and fair, and that parliaments can perform their duties competently, that corruption is combated, and that subnational government structures and their capacities are strengthened. This is what we have been doing for many years, and we will continue to do so, but perhaps also strengthen a bit what we've been doing there. In order to achieve this, we will continue to provide direct and operational financial support to countries. Now, the second field of action that you see there, the democracy diplomacy, this is what's really new. What do we mean by democracy diplomacy? Sounds fancy, we find, but probably not very clear what we want to say with it. In short, we want to use classic diplomatic tools in a more systematic manner for the sake of democracy promotion. This involves, on the one hand, fostering bilateral and multilateral dialogues. On the other hand, it involves supporting multi-stakeholder platforms where different actors can exchange best practices, allow for mutual learning, and identify joint courses of action. Our democracy diplomacy will also remain open and flexible and pay particular attention to positive democratic developments. Switzerland will also stand ready to offer quick and innovative support when there is a democratic opening, wherever and whenever our support is welcomed. But in sum, I cannot emphasize enough. To us, the key or the essential bit is to engage political actors. Research, there again, research shows very clearly that the values and convictions of political actors are absolutely essential to the resilience of democracies. So for this, we aim for genuine political discussions, but we want to do so as equal partners, and we are willing to learn from one another. That's what the projects are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, you name democracy diplomacy as an element of this strategy, of these guidelines. That's very interesting. But also, isn't there like a challenge that democracy in many international treaties, in many multilateral contexts, is really not a word often used as such? I mean, there's no a legal reference to it. So the standards are not very clear what democracy means. So what can Switzerland here do with this democracy diplomacy?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, this is where we are venturing into a new area, because Switzerland, usually it's about international law, human rights, rule of law. And so we are starting to use this terminology, which of course can polarize. In our view, this is this polarization, or this unease to talk about democracy at the global level, is at the basis due to the varying understandings of what democracy means, and because democracy has suffered from an increasingly negative connotation over the past years. As such, an important part of democracy diplomacy is to contribute to anchoring democracy as a powerful political model in international discourse. The widely held belief that democracies do not deliver is simply not true. We see it in this country, we see it in many countries, that democracy is an effective political model that delivers tangible benefits to its people. This is why it's one of our priorities to put the strength of democratic systems increasingly on the agenda of multilateral discussions. And when doing so, we will be careful that this dialogue is inclusive and eye level. We must be open-minded, and as I said before, learn from each other. Only then we can also bring in or make others appreciate our convictions. Then also there is this this challenge that there are no explicit reference to democracy in many international norms and standards. For instance, the global organization, the UN, does not mention democracy at in any of its founding documents. There are also various regional organizations, but there are many regional organizations that do actually explicitly commit to democracy. One example is the 1990 OSCE Charter of Paris, which says that member states agreed, or member countries undertake to build, consolidate and strengthen democracy as the only system of government of our nation. But of course this is a regional circle of states. But in addition to these references, what we can see lately in the recent years, that there have been various initiatives around these democracies. For example, the Council of Europe recently held its only 4th summit of heads of state and government in its history, where it adopted the Reykjavik principles for democracy. So we can see that there is a lot of interest and dynamism around democracy right now, or over the past years, in multilateral arenas, meaning of groups of states discussing with each other, and we want to build on that momentum. So as a first step, we want to find out how Switzerland can use this momentum most effectively and substantively to contribute to an inclusive dialogue around democracy in multilateral discussions. So one area we can certainly use are the synergies with our human rights diplomacy and our expertise in the domain of rule of law that I mentioned before. But in addition to the human rights domain, there are also links between democracy and sustainable peace and development. And especially in the realm of peace, as we are still now a member of the UN Security Council, but leaving the Council next year, there are important discussions are continuing also as a follow-up to the Summit for the Future, which is happening in a couple of days at the UN. And there, very clearly, we see a role for Switzerland to show the crucial role democracy plays in the consolidation of peace. And we believe that this link does not only receive sufficient attention and could offer an entry point for democracy into multilateral discussions, even at the UN. Right. Thank you.
I mean, this is a fascinating link. I mean, peace and democracy. I mean, it's not a new concept and not a new idea. I mean, many of us may recall Immanuel Kant's perpetual peace with the assumption that democracies are not go to war to each another. And this has been discussed a lot in the last 200 years. But also at Varieties of Democracy, Staffan, you have really tried to empirically look into these cases for democracy. I mean, democracy and peace, but also what does democracy mean for the economy, for human development? So the question to you is, do democracies really perform better? And if yes, why is that?
The answer is, in a number of areas, the answer is yes. Democracies do perform better. It's been a subject of debate also in science for many, many years, decades. But it's very clear. We did this work, Case for Democracy. That report is also available online. It was launched last year in Washington, D.C., and a joint collaboration. So we looked at the best available science, the latest, most rigorous studies that really do everything we can to identify whether there are causal effects or not. And we cover 8 areas and wrote policy briefs on each one of them, and they're available for you online. But let me just take a few examples here in this brief amount of time without losing the mic completely. And one of them is economic growth. Right? So democracies do a lot better on economic growth. The graph down to the right illustrates with the red the average level of economic growth by democracies versus autocracies. And so it's higher on average, and it also, democracies avoid the really disastrous outcomes of big, huge negative economic growth. It's like a safety net. It's very close to the famous Nobel laureate Amartya Sen, who demonstrated that large-scale famines never occur in democracies because of the accountability mechanism. Right? But also that famous study by Acemoglu and Robinson, there are many studies now here, right? But just demonstrating with synthetic controls that when countries transition to democracy, their economic growth, GDP per capita is 20% higher 15 years after transition than if they had stayed autocracies. Democracy is also better at using that growth for things that are public goods. So here are sort of average effects across a number of studies with safe water, 23% more safe water than if they are autocracies, immunization, electricity access, and internet access. Right? Enormous differences. Also because democracies allow freedom of speech and promote that. In other areas like human development, and these are sort of studies from the Lancet and British Medical Journal, things like that. Really the toughest peer review you can have in the world in science. And across a range of health outcomes, a couple of them just illustrated here, democracy delivers in terms of better human development, human health. Look at just infant mortality. So this study showed that if a country goes from a full autocracy to a really good democracy, infant mortality on average goes down 94%. That's kind of a big effect. And then finally, you mentioned Immanuel Kant, here he is, and his famous theory of the democratic peace. There are now like a zillion studies demonstrating again that democracies do not fight wars with each other. Democracies go to war with autocracies, and autocracies go to war with each other. Just illustrate here. So Russia in 1995, before Putin came into power, and this is a probability graph, the probability of engaging in a militarized conflict with another state. And the other red line there in 2021 is when the illegal invasion of Ukraine happened. If Russia had stayed as democratic as it was in the mid-90s, it was by no way a perfect democracy, but it was relative to today much more democratic. If it had stayed that democratic, Russia would never have invaded Ukraine. We know that. So the evidence in this area is very, very clear. There's a very, very strong empirical link between peace, security, and democracy. And also in those studies, in that relationship, it has been shown that media plays, the freedom of the media plays a really critical part, because it, things like it doesn't allow leaders to lie about the other side, that they are about to invade us and therefore we must invade them or fight them, or things like that. A free, open media prevents that sort of radical disinformation to the people. So again, media is really, really central in this. Everything is available on the website if you want to dig into it further. This is just less than 5 minutes. Short.
You need more than you need more than 5 minutes to study this website. I can promise you, and it's also worth it. But based on this evidence and also this clear message, I mean, to conclude also a little bit our initial conversation here, how do you assess now this approach, the Swiss approach? I mean, putting international democracy support in the constitution, having a strategy for it, and now also adopting guidelines. From your experience, how successful can that be?
Yeah. I think we have to do two things at the same time. First of all, I think Switzerland is really well placed for some of the reasons that were mentioned, because of its long history with building democratic institutions in a multilingual setting with lots of independence for different parts of the country, because a lot of the countries out there in the world face similar issues, right? In building democracy, multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-division, divided countries. Traditional democracy support, training journalists in the media sphere and supporting independent media in different ways is really important to continue. But I think because we're in this wave of autocratization, driven by the governments in those countries, right? It's people like Fidesz and Orban in Hungary. It's people like Modi and BJP in India. It was Bolsonaro in Brazil, and so on. We can go down the line. Peace and justice in Poland. It's the governments that are driving this, right? So if you think of it in terms of the media, for example, then you need to think in terms of democracy protection, not democracy support. And it's about protecting institutions like the free media from being overtaken, censored, and undermined by the executive. That will be a diplomatic challenge, I can tell you. You know that, it's a completely different ballgame, right? To prevent things like Orban and his clientele take over 98% of the media in Hungary by already 2018, then the game is over, right? So that's a different set of challenges, I think.
Yes, and it must mean something for the actions, the concrete actions. But we are, of course, a little bit curious about what's coming up next. I mean, you were talking very, nicely about all these ideas and strategies, but do you have any concrete next steps you can share with us?
Of course, but the steps are going to be very small ones, because we need, for us also as, how do you say it, as civil servants, as political actors, we need very substantive foundations and policy mandates to do things. And so we are still waiting to publish these guidelines. We're expected to do this in the coming weeks. And once they are published, of course, we will get to work and put them into action. As mentioned earlier, a particular focus of my division lies in developing the concept of democracy diplomacy, meaning, I mean, we have developed already, we have been working on this already. Of course, we're not starting by zero, but to that effect, we will develop or continue to develop and strengthen our network of states that, like us, would like to talk about democracy, its strengths, its challenges, and also possible solutions on the bilateral and multilateral level. In addition, we will also continue to develop projects supporting the institutional and societal frameworks and framework conditions necessary for democratic governance. And for this, we will also look into new bilateral collaboration, etc. But as I said, for us, we really need to have the policy documents that are adopted and undersigned by our political leaders. And going from there, we will continue the action that we are preparing right now. So I will leave it for with this right now, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for hosting this event, of course, which is also a very important platform or event for us here in Bern, as we are located here, and to see once again, to have a very interesting dialogue that you're going to continue all day today in this wonderful tower. Wonderful tower. It has also a long history. But so thank you very much for inviting us, inviting me to be able to present a little bit what's lying ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine Löw. Thank you very much, Staffan Lindberg, for this. A little takeaway for you, and yes, we stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. We are just a little bit rearranging for the panel, which starts now. Don't go away. So yes, because this brings us now to the main theme of today's Democracy Day, which has been named many times already, also in the explanations of Staffan in its research, that the media really plays an important role in both strengthening, protecting, but sometimes also weakening democracy. So we want to start with a panel which is very, you can say, diverse when it comes from directions, from 7 countries and 3 continents. And I want to welcome Konrad Siemaszko from Poland, and Vesna Nikodinoska from North Macedonia, Firas Shamsan from Yemen and Switzerland, and Daniela Vancic from Serbia, USA, and Germany. Thank you. Yeah. And we start directly, and I will introduce each by you when you are giving your introduction statements and notes and explanations. And I want to start with you, Konrad. You are a lawyer at the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights and have in the last 8 years worked with the issue of media freedom at the Helsinki Foundation. You have been involved in supporting journalists in legal proceedings and also produced reports on this issue. Because we have heard it already a little bit, and many of us also have followed that, of course, that your country, Poland, has experienced quite a roller coaster in democracy development in recent decades, and also an autocratic backsliding, which had a huge impact on the role and the function of public media as well, as you can say, a backbone of democracy. So, welcome to tell us your story and share your insights in maximum 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll just check whether it works. Yes. Well, I'd like to share a very brief story about public media in Poland, starting with a question whether it will be a testing ground for a new way forward or actually a wasted opportunity for a deep reform? I'll start away with an answer that it's still too soon to answer the question. Time will tell in a year or two. But in order to understand how I can impose such a question, a short introduction about the recent history of the Polish public media is needed first. Well, public media in Poland has always been far from ideal. Many governments in the past wanted to influence it in some form or another. There has been recurring problems of some pro-government bias, greater or smaller, depending on the period. However, what has happened to the public media after the 2015 elections that we already heard about as a backsliding in democracy when the Law and Justice came to power was unprecedented in the modern history. Through a series of legal reforms and changes in the public media management and staff, public media were turned into a ruling party mouthpieces, and there are several cases about it, as confirmed by ODIHR special elections assessment, which claimed, for example, that it acted as a campaign vehicle during the elections. They demonized the political opposition, sometimes quite literally. This picture showing Donald Tusk as a devil was shown, I would say, hundreds of thousands of times during the evening news programs. And many other forms of dissent were demonized, from teachers on strikes to civil society, street protesters, and independent media in general. Moreover, in some cases, the public media and the Law and Justice government spread actual hate speech. I'm not afraid to say this, especially homophobic hate speech against LGBT people and xenophobic hate speech against migrants and asylum seekers. This is a documentary, a name of a documentary, Inwazja, which means invasion, which is a very Kremlin-like style documentary about, this kind of a LGBT ideology invasion that was screened by the public television just before elections in 2018, to just give you one example. So, for all these reasons, it was absolutely clear after the last year elections that when the new coalition came to power, that public media needed to be urgently and thoroughly reformed. The new government quite quickly started to adopt changes right in December when they were formed a government after the fall elections. However, the way that the changes has been introduced, at least have begun, raised some serious legal doubts, at least for some observers. So my organization, Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights, expressed some doubts, but also, for example, International Press Institute. It's quite a complex issue, but very briefly, the changes so far have not been done for a legislative reform. The new government circumvented the regulatory bodies and dismissed the public media management directly, relying on a corporate law, acting like as a representative of a shareholder state treasury. So it was dubious from a legal point of view, from a point of view of the constitutional international standards, where a government should not directly dismiss the media, and perhaps most importantly, it sets, as IPI said, a dangerous precedent for every new government. Many commentators, to be fair, actually seem to accept this step as on the basis that the end justifies the means, which we think is quite dubious, with all, of course, being clear that deep changes need to be done. So what are the effects of these changes? One of the changes, the new name of the evening program. It's now not the news, not Wiadomości, but 9:30 as the time of the program. But it's not just this change. Definitely, there have been some improvements with regards to the balance of the content, where there's less, this kind of a striking hostility as we've seen in the previous years. There's more plurality, but there's still some bias in favor of the new government. it's still far from being impartial and far from representing the Polish society in its diversity. To give an example, Demagog, which is a well-established fact-checking Polish website, checked before the European Parliament elections in May the public affairs programs in public media, the new public media, and the private media. Well, and as you can see, it turned out in May, when it comes to the sort of main evening interview program, public affairs program, almost 90% of the politicians appearing on the program represent the ruling coalition, and there was 0 women invited to these programs, compared to two others, private channels where the gender balance was again far from ideal but better, and there was more balance when it comes to political representation. So this is the question of content. When it comes to the legal structure, currently the public media is still operating under some sort of provisional legal conditions, but in June this year, the government presented sort of its first ideas about a deeper legislative reforms this time on the public media, under the broader umbrella of a new media reform on the occasion of implementing the European Media Freedom Act, you might be aware of, which among others includes provisions on public media. A super brief review on the first ideas. It's of course better, but there's too much coming back to the sort of a pre-2015 legal structure, while what we need are deeper changes. So this brings me to the last point, what kind of deeper changes then we need. And to put it in a slogan, I'd like to make public media public. Not again, because it never has been public, but like make it worth of its actual name. Well, let me get back to the basics, why we need actually public media. So, well, we need it because democracy requires well-informed society that is able to hold the power accountable, both private actors and public actors. Informed society is able to reflect on it in its entirety, in its whole complexity, and requires a forum for a free exchange of pluralistic ideas. So these are the basics you're obviously aware of. And this, of course, requires a specific infrastructure that remains free from both risk from the state actors we heard of, but also from commercial influences. And this is why we need public media next to the commercial media, and why you need public media, not state media, as we have experienced it in the last 8 years. And how to get there? Well, I believe that public media cannot really support democracy and fulfill their role unless it is democratized itself. Among others, by putting it under democratic scrutiny through inclusion of broadly understood civil society in the appointment procedure and a control procedure, so by putting more public participation in the actual governance of the public media, so it will be distinct from both commercial and state media. So let me just finish it with a broader perspective, because I believe that Polish public media can serve as this testing ground for this deep pro-democratic changes. With this very recent memory of this terrible state of state media, there is a widespread consensus that some public media reform needs to be done, and this chance can't be wasted with some superficial semi-reforms. All will regret it sooner than we think. And this circumstances, testing ground circumstances, have the stakes that of course go beyond just Poland, I believe. It might show whether it's plausible to make a leap forward, to draw lessons from the democratic backslide, and not to go back to the business as usual, but actually, to dare to imagine a more democratic way forward that would be more resilient for future crises. So, well, keep finger crossed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Konrad. This Polish case is, of course, extremely interesting when it comes to this kind of developments in different directions. What I would like to ask to you is, which are the key forces you see in Polish society who are behind this kind of sustainable reform of the public media? I mean, it's easy to see that we have that also in other countries, that when the government changed, the board of the public media changed, the leader changed. In many countries, a big debate about that. But do you see that there are really stakeholders and forces and democratic-minded interests who can make this possible?
That's an excellent question. Yes, I believe there are already a long ongoing discussion that started already before the elections with some concrete thinking about how to reform it. So important actors include different kinds of associations of journalists, both journalists that have experience of working in public media and know very well what's the importance of public media being independent, because of their experience, being dismissed for being independent, but also associations of journalists more broadly that understand the case very well. There's a question of a broader civil society, I believe, organizations that work on human rights, rule of law and democracy, and see the public media and this broader ecosystem of democratic institutions. But I also believe that there should be more space, and this is something that perhaps is a task for us more, to include more actors, actually. The actors that are not sort of the usual suspect you would add to the table, but I'd like to think of public media as a space for these actors to be there. Just trade unions, for example, not just trade unions of journalists, but actually trade unions as a representative of working people. So I believe that there's already some discussion forces that are meeting on round tables and discussing this, but we need to sort of broaden the table.
There's one option for a question to Konrad on his presentation. If anybody has a question, also on the panel. Anything you wanted ever to know about what's going on in Poland on democratization and autocratization? You have to wait for the microphone.
As someone from business, if you mention trade unions, I of course admire trade unions, but we as employees, what can we do also in Poland? So it's always this trade union, it brings it a little bit too much in the left side, isn't it?
Well, I believe that there's this idea of trialogue always, of the sort of different actors, both trade unions and business sector and government. So yeah, I just mentioned trade unions perhaps as an actor that doesn't have that voice is sort of underrepresented. But of course, I believe that the representatives of the business, especially the media business, are more than welcome and should be included in the discussion.
Yes, of course, we will have the opportunity to discuss this also in the World Café afterwards, these different fields we are addressing. But now I want to go from the role of public media for democracy and the case of Poland to the issue of media literacy and to North Macedonia. Vesna Nikodinoska, you come from Skopje. You are the senior program manager at the Macedonian Institute for Media and have yourself a background as a journalist. Since 2010, you have been involved in developing media in your country and also developing media literacy and critical thinking skills among young people. Vesna, please share with us your story and experience and insights into the question how media literacy can make democracy stronger.
Thank you for inviting me today to speak on this really important topic, especially having in mind the rise, the increasing of disinformation in the past years. So in order to understand the role of media in promoting democracy from the perspective of media literacy. First, we need to understand what is media literacy and why is it important. I will start from the second question. Why is it important? Because of the world we live in, because we live in the media-saturated world. And media are integral part of our lives. They shape our opinions, our habits, our beliefs. They influence our culture, and media are actually our culture. So every day, on a daily level, every second, we are facing abundance of information from different sources. So in order to find the relevant content, to find where we are looking for, to find credible information, we need to be able to discern what is true, what is false, what is propaganda, what is quality news, what is quality information, what is fact, what is opinion. Especially with the rise of disinformation in the past years, with the political crisis on the global level, with the pandemics as well, we need this set of skills to be able to find the right information, the credible information. This illustration here, I found it interesting because it shows how our old habits and daily and professional routines are replaced today with the social networks. So, what is media literacy? As I said, it is a set of skills, set of knowledge. So, in order one to be able to access different sources of information from various platforms, and to locate first this information, credible information, and to select relevant content from the abundance of information. And then one needs to be able to analyze, to deconstruct the media messages, because media literacy is all about asking questions. Who created this message? Why somebody created this message? What is its purpose? What is the effect of this message? What is the target audience of this message? The next step is we evaluate the messages, the value of the messages. We relate it with our own experience on the basis of our democratic, ethical, religious principles, and we make a judgment about media messages. And media literacy is a lot about self-expression. People need to be able to express their thoughts, their ideas, their opinions. And it's about creation of media content as well. So creation of media content, but in responsible and accountable way. We need to be responsible towards the others. We need to be responsible for the content we share, we produce and share, because it needs to be truthful, it needs to be credible, it needs to be reliable. And at the end, media literacy creates people who are ready to take action. People who have their own opinions, who are ready to take action and participate in the processes. So, what meaningful media literacy means then? It's understanding and awareness about media literacy actually asks for comprehensive, holistic approach in the society, including institutions, including academia, media and journalists, regulatory and self-regulatory bodies, civil society organizations and citizens, because we need to increase the awareness so we have more media literate citizens who can participate into the democratic processes, in the social processes, and they can put pressure on the institutions to be transparent, accountable. They can put pressure on media as well to create, to deliver high quality information. So what this comprehensive approach means in terms of North Macedonia? Educational institutions recognized the initiative of the civil society sector to include media literacy into the formal education, into the educational system. So schools, teachers, universities, students are all involved in various kinds of activities in formal and non-formal education. I would like to emphasize the role of public service media, Macedonian radio and television, who is legally obliged to promote media literacy and to produce media literacy related content. And also the regulatory body, which is very active actor in the media literacy field. Media regulator actually coordinates a network of media literacy network consisted of 90 members in the society, media, civil society organizations, schools, universities, institutions as well. So it also coordinates, administers actually the UNESCO manifestation Media Literacy Days, which are organized at the end of October in the past 6 years. And it does a lot of research about the levels and awareness of media literacy among the citizens in different age groups. I would like to say a few words about what we are doing. I come from Macedonian Institute for Media, what our organization has been doing in terms of media literacy. And in the frames of this project, USAID Media Literacy Project, You Think, we work with educational institutions, with the ministry and with the Bureau for Development of Education. They actually, together, they would like to introduce the media literacy and critical thinking in whole educational process. So our efforts are on systemic level. We cover primary education. We introduced already media literacy in curricula from 1st to 9th grade. And then we will start working with secondary education. And at the universities, at 8 universities, we already developed, our partners from the project, already developed modules and subjects related to media literacy. We trained over 8,000 teachers across the country. We developed teaching and studying resources for teachers and students. We also established 70 journalism clubs in primary schools where students, pupils learn journalism, learn how to create media content, and it has been very successful activity with the schools especially. In non-formal education related to media literacy has a long tradition in Macedonia. Only Macedonian Institute for Media works since 2009, has been working since 2009 in media literacy field. And here you can see debate clubs in secondary schools. The project aims to bring young people together to discuss, to practice dialogue, debates, to create media products, to run campaigns on various topics. And they also take internships in media outlets across the country. What is another important, let's say, pillar of the project is we are trying to foster inclusion of different youth groups. This is why we actually adopted different learning materials for young people with visual and hearing disabilities. At the end, how media support democracy from perspective of media literacy. Media literacy creates critical thinkers. These critical thinkers have potential to take action, as I said, to participate. They want to participate in the processes. They want their voice to be heard. So media, they actually put pressure on media for quality information, and they demand high quality information from media. This is why media need to educate and nurture their publics, because they can recognize good journalism. They can discern between professional information, quality information, and disinformation, propaganda, conspiracy theories. So they can make this distinction. This is why media need to educate their publics. And at the end, the media literate publics from one side and professional journalism from the other side. These are our instruments as a societies to combat disinformation. We live in disinformation age, in information age, but with a lot of disinformation. And this is why we need this media literacy, public and professional journalism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vesna. This is a very encouraging and important experience. What I'm a little bit curious about, of course, I do not know a lot about North Macedonia and the media and democracy there. I've been a couple of times, but can you share maybe some example where you can explain to us what that means for democracy concretely in North Macedonia, and maybe also an example where you really feel that it hasn't really had this success you hoped for?
Before 2017, we had a more autocratic government, let's say. So the media were very much politicized and particized, and they were working in the machinery of the government. But then people, as I say, people who are interested, who wanted to take action, went on the streets, and then the colorful revolution happened, and the government was changed. But why I'm saying this? Because in that period, the media were captured actually from the political powers, from the political party, ruling political party. And you could have seen same lines, headlines in a dozen of media who were biased towards the government. Same headlines, same quotes, without any critical approach towards the news, towards the issue, towards the topic, especially towards the government and towards the government policies. And from the another example, for example, I'm sure that most of you have heard about Veles teenagers who changed the election, the US elections, who influenced on US elections in 2017, 16 and 17. So there are factories for producing fake news, disinformation, and these people actually activated again before these US elections. And this is why we need to be aware that this phenomena is happening. And the people in Macedonia, we recently conducted a survey on 14 and 15 year age students in high school. They are aware about the disinformation, and they can recognize the disinformation. What they cannot recognize is, what they do not know actually is the tools and mechanisms how to spot fake photographs, for example, fake visual material in the social networks. So I think that new generations are more aware about what's going on, about the disinformation, about the media content they are receiving, than the older generations who are not that much on social networks, let's say.
Question from the room? Yes, there's one.
How does the public execute pressure on the media in Macedonia?
At the moment, the situation is different because I was talking about the period before 2017, when we had more autocratic power, let's say. I don't know how much you are acquainted with the situation, political situation in Macedonia, but it was the then Prime Minister, Gruevski, fled to Hungary, for example, at that period. When the colorful revolution, after the colorful revolution happened, how the pressure was put on the media. These are media who are prone, who are more, let's say, rightist oriented, and they, the government then used a lot of public advertising. So the convenient media who agreed with the politics of the ruling party, received more public advertising, for example, for some campaign from public interest. That was one of the mechanisms. So it is a business and political, let's say, interests related.
Thank you very much, Vesna. I think media literacy, it's very important also when it comes to social media, and social media have often been characterized by being both an opportunity and a threat to democracy. And the person who has extensive professional experience in this field is Firas Shamsan here. You are a media professional and filmmaker from Yemen. And as a consequence of the war in your home country, you have come to Switzerland as a guest writer, exploring the potentials and risk of social media and producing a lot of content yourself. We already experienced this morning that you are producing all the time. And Firas, we are very curious in your sharing and your experience in examining strategies of using social media for supporting democracy. Welcome.
Welcome everyone. I'm really grateful to see all these great people. Also, I'm happy to see my friends and my colleagues also here. When we want to talk about social media, I came from a background of media. I work in the media, in TV, in newspapers, and now I moved to creating social media content and also documentary films. So when I speak about creating content, or we talk about social media is totally different than the media we know. It's something everyday change, which you are today, you can be famous for 15 minutes. And this is what will happen. Everyone in the world will be famous for 15 minutes. You will like it, you will not like it, you will be part of it. You will be in live stream or something. So when we want to speak about producing content through media, the process was so simple. As you're working in SRF, it's really nice, and then you go to your office and then you start to focus about what can you add as a value. But in social media, you wake up and you want to follow the trend. And when you get and you be the trend this day, tomorrow is someone else, and then you have to follow. So the issue about social media and the original media, it's about two different words. The word of media, where you produce, you create, and you have the teamwork, and you have the time to check the news, it's fake, it's right, it's good, it's bad. But with social media, who's first? So who tagged you first? I tagged the Political Forum today, so I made something, you can see it also. So to be, or to make the trend, you must be doing something. And as you know, like, it's so funny. I will tell you a story. When we go to the zoo, I'm against putting animal in the zoo. But when you go to the zoo, actually you don't go to see the lion. You go to see the monkey. Same in social media. Whose will make you fun? So in the regular or the modern news, you will go and you will open. I remember in 1994, when the war is happening, so people was trying to hold these batteries to hear BBC to know the news. They don't believe the media. But right now, you will see the action directly. You will see everything's around you. But the things, can you check, is this true or false? Are you following this trend? Or are you against, are you with? So you have to make the decide in second. Because 1 minute, second, it's something else. And then when we speak about creating content through social media, it's totally different and more and worse than the media itself. Because with the media, you need a team, group, camera. No, now it's your phone. And it's now. So if someone take the footage right now before you're done. So what we want to speak about making through social media. So we should not to be the lion or the monkey in the zoo. The people coming for the monkey more than the lion in the zoo. Same thing in the social media. When we speak about Switzerland, when I come to Switzerland and we speak about stereotypes. So when you speak about stereotype, watch chocolate and you come to Switzerland and totally different. Many people doesn't know Bern is the capital. When I post, Bern is the capital, they say, no, Geneva. So why? Because now, through social media, they discover something new. So when we want to speak about creating content, when you come to Switzerland, many people like Michael Jackson was coming here to stay. Many famous people walk in the street, no one noticed them. But if you come last month, there was a young man going here. His name is Speed, and he's going crazy. And the young people from Switzerland, they get crazy. And all people, they look like, we don't know this guy. Why our children is following him? He's Auslander. He's a black man, Schwarz, and our children is running after him. He's so famous, he has security. So the thing is totally changed, even in the land. So when we speak about creating content through democracy, what is democracy? It's a boring thing. Most of the people who are watching us today, not the young people, most of them, the old people or the young people who will be interested or know me or know someone around. So to get contact or create something to be rememberable. Many people will not watch my videos because I speak about political issue. They're so confused. They want to watch something else. They say, this is news. So how I create content through social media? For me, is the value in the social media is the numbers. It's like the first things, I was in Sweden once, I was filming and there's some children follow me and they see me with the camera, and the first question they ask me, how many followers you have? They didn't ask me what I'm doing. When I was in Yemen, I was filming also a documentary about schools, and someone came to me and say, what are you doing? He catch me. You work with who? He made an investigation with me, and I asked him, okay, who are you exactly? He said, no, I'm just walking in the street. So totally now, even the question was totally different. They start to ask you, they doesn't care what you do. They care how many followers you have. So to create something about democracy, and democracy, it's a process. Democracy is not just one day, it's not trend, it will not be trend. Democracy will not be trend. But the trend will be through the situation about our education. When we speak about media, fake news as an example, social media, people love fake news. Put a fake photo, everyone will share it. Try to speak about a good things, no one will like it. So the things, to be even a trend, you must do something fake. Now, what I believe, what we must do for the time, what we must do for sharing democracy through social media. Number one, it's like make a value. What is the value? For me, I do the video or the film, not many followers, but I believe that the things I do it today, it's value in 10 years. It's history. So how we can produce and create things? Today I had like a small video. I couldn't make everything in my show, but I will share a small video. Is from here? Okay, so.
Second.
Okay, so yeah, you take it from here and play. Can you go to the beginning? The beginning, okay. And the voice.
backstage.
I will start with the show I created. It's called Flash Time.
بالباكستيج وحفل انا مشوى اليمن صح؟
أنا طبعا هذا يمكن ما بتصدقوش، بس هذا فعلا هو عمدة مدينة بيرن، والآن هو رايح اجتماع بالدراجة.
فيراس مع السلامة.
مع السلامة.
يا مرحبا، أنا اليوم في منتدى باريس للسلام العالمي.
هنا في سويسرا.
I really like him. It's from my great-grandfather.
نساء موجودات في المجتمع السويسري من مختلف الأطياف.
يا مرحبا، اليوم أنا في راديو رابع بقدم حلقة خاصة عن الموسيقى والثقافة اليمنية.
سويسرا أخذتني الذاكرة لشوقي لحفلات الزواج في اليمن، اللي كنت أحب دائما أحضر وأرقص في عرس أصدقائي. ما وجدتش كثير من الفيديوهات
في سور برلين، ذلك السور الذي كان يفصل ألمانيا إلى اثنين، لكن الحقيقة لم تكن 3 أو 4 أمتار، بل كان حاجز أهم.
تحتضن ماليزيا، جيبوتي ومصر النسبة الأكبر من اليمنيين الذين يأملون لم شملهم بعائلاتهم في أمريكا.
Don't kill each other. So Yemeni people don't kill each other.
Journalist, Schriftsteller, auch, wie sagt man, Multimedia.
Das ist einfach, er ist nicht nur Poet, er ist Journalist, er ist Comedian, er ist ein Multitalent, er ist auch...
Here with us tonight, dann haben wir
Firas Shamsan.
Firas Shamsan, der den Dokumentarfilm von heute gemacht hat.
كان عامل زي ما يكون ريشة في مهب الريح، أنت وحظك، ما عندكش من يسندك ريشة وتطير.
حقيقة تقع على اليمن مسؤولية الحفاظ عليه والاستفادة من مخزونها وموروثها الثقافي والغنائي الضخم.
المواطنين السويسريين في هذا البرلمان حيث يتخذون قراراتهم، جميع الإجراءات، جميع القرارات التي يتخذوها يتم عن هذا المكان. اليوم احنا في ضيافة جميلة جدا. We are today. I'm really happy to be here. Samuel, you are a member of the Canton Bern Parliament.
So I'm sure only one person or maybe two understand this. Is it? This is exactly what we feel as immigrants in Switzerland and Europe. When I start to create content, I realize I have two audiences, or three or four. Do I create content to Swiss, which I don't speak? Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, a petit Französisch, and no Italiano. Or I have to create something for the audience who's look like me in Europe, like Arab immigrants, traveler. Or I create content to Yemenis people, which they have less access to media, they have less access to internet, and they have less access to connection and speak free. So I choose to create things in Arabic, which, as you notice, this is the same thing it's happening to me when I come to Switzerland, first time. I cannot understand the TV, I don't watch. So the only chance to go back and watch the channels where you come from, but most of it controlled. Most of it work based on agenda. But if you want to be a freelancer, or, you know, we have a saying in Arabic, we say, نَقُولُ مَا نَشَاء نَنَامُ بِلَا عَشَاء, which we can say whatever we need and we sleep without it. So this is the things you have it as creating content through social media to audience far away. So I choose to say, if you notice, most of them, they speak in Arabic. Some they speak it, some they teach them, but I choose to do something different, which how we can influence the people in Yemen and the people in Switzerland through the content from Switzerland, as Switzerland is not part of the war or occupation. We will let out the money outside now, but we will speak about that. Everyone will like Switzerland for the chocolate or the cloak and that, and they have a good memories. Or bad memories if you pay the tickets or you leave your car. Or so the things we must share something differently, where we go through the media and we get the experience of the people, which what I did today with the video of this through Eyes of Shamsan, which is a new YouTube project, which I started with a parliament experience between a Swiss parliamentist and Yemenis parliamentist, which they are 25 years in the parliament without election. So to give a hope for the future, this is what we want to do. Also today I want to give a thanks also to Francesca, Martin, and all friends who's here, because when I start to do this, it was so alone, but then they opened the places for me. Now we start again to create, and we hope to create more But the question now, how we can create content through the immigrants and the people who's coming and struggling to understand the culture and struggling to deliver their own message in the country back. I hope I didn't make it alone.
Thank you. No, I think you gave us, even if I couldn't understand everything you said there, I understood that the mayor of Bern said hello to you. No, I think it's a fascinating experience and approach. And of course, what I'm very curious about, but we have not so much time now, is a little bit in which way do you feel that you already have succeeded with this approach here during your time in Switzerland?
Not yet.
Not at all?
Okay, so since 3 years, I started a project which is called Searching for Saba, which is kind of a documentary. I will share it through internet, which is I start to search about women in exile. And then I recognize that the Queen of Saba is presented here. So from my country, the Queen of Saba is here in Bern. You know, she have a statue. And then I start to search through this information. You will not find it through the books or that. But when you search in the history, you know, like you go and you see the statues and you don't know anything about the history of this stuff. So now the project I do, I start to search for the women in exile from Yemen, where they totally take them away from the political side, from everything, media, art, culture. Same time, women in Switzerland, they was forbidden to be in politics. And now they are, you have the president, you have that many people around. And the things I try to make connection. The big problem is to continue and create something. I'm really glad that we are today with Francesca. I want to give her like a clap. So she collaborates with this project. She hosts us in that. I would like you to clap for Francesca, which she believes in this project, and I go, and she's participated in this project, this film project. But now, how we can finish this project? Since 3 years, I'm creating a project, but to get financially, to get contact with the people, to share this, it's need more time. Then the most important thing, this is not trend things. The trend is totally different. So if I want to be a trend, it's easy. There is, I will end with this, an Egyptian said, you will understand? No, okay. So if you want to be a trend, so لو كنت في بلاد الغرب شلح وجري, which is mean if you are in a foreigner country, take your clothes and run. This is how trend made these days. So we don't have to take our clothes and run away to get attention of the people. At least we can start slow, langsam, slowly. And we create something, we'll live for 10 years. That's what I believe. And the most important things, nothing is guaranteed in internet, because when Facebook tried to create threads, it's go high, fast, but no one, I don't know if you have it or use it. Same like X and Twitter and this. So every time social media it's change, and we have to discover how we get balance. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, there will be the possibility, of course, to talk with you also in the World Cafe. And you also, when we discussed this before this event, you also told me about this feature that in Yemen you didn't have any election for more than 10 years. 25 years. And this is, of course, a big contrast to what we experience today, this year in the world, with you can say a world record of elections going on, and one imminent important election is coming up 55 days from now, the US presidential election. Some of us have a little bit seen what's going on last night, and their media plays, of course, an important role in influencing elections. I mean, one of the candidates, the male candidate, he talked when he was pressed about what he said about immigrants eating American pets. He said, they say it on television. So
I'm vegetarian, so Swiss people, I have lactose intolerance. I'm vegetarian, your cow is safe. I'm wearing the t-shirt from Swiss, so yeah.
But I would
the
like
migrants doesn't eat it.
Yes.
And they doesn't eat pork.
No. I welcome Daniela Vancic for this last part of this panel. You are the European Program Manager at Democracy International since 2017. But I remember that when you started this, you were telling us who were hiring you at the time that you were the campaign manager for the Democratic Party in Michigan at the election 2016. So we can already say that you are not a non-partisan in this issue on the election on the United States, but you have a long experience, you're following it very closely, and we would like, of course, from your perspective, see a little bit what are your comments and what are your insights on the role of media in these US elections. You have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Bruno, and thanks for the invitation. Yes, it's always an honor to also hear the four speakers before me, because now I have a chance to integrate what they've also been able to say. And while I do have this background, this American background, and now it's all eyes on the U.S. election, my working context is mostly EU. So I'm really able to look at this contrast and see how media and how also voter education programs and how people understand elections and these campaigns. And there are a lot of parallels, of course. We talked about a few of the major roles of the media, which I think are also cross-cutting, but work especially in both the EU and US context. One is, of course, providing information and educating citizens. That's mostly through voter literacy programs, and there's some really great programs in the US. I don't have, thank you. And what I really noticed the difference now when I'm looking at the contrast between US and EU, or even what you showed us also, Vesna, in North Macedonia, is that a lot of the voter literacy programs in the US, which is doing very important work, is that it's very focused on demographic base. So we are especially not just educating young people, which need a lot of literacy, media literacy support, but then also people from different backgrounds, people of color, for example, people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. And there is a program that is dedicated to each of these different demographic groups. Even geographic groups, actually one really famous, and they do really great work, literacy program is Fair Fight Action, that's run by Stacey Abrams in the state of Georgia, which is focused on women and people of color, especially, and first-time voters, but from these demographic backgrounds in the state of Georgia. And it's important there because this is a direct reaction of voter suppression laws. And that's something that I think we don't experience so much in Europe, that we have really the protection, that we don't see an ongoing, let's say, coordinated effort for voter suppression here. Maybe in some cases, definitely, but not on in the way that we see in the U.S. In the state of Georgia, we see, of course, as one of the states that was highly contested in the 2020 election, where Trump was trying to just find me 10,000 more votes. And so because of this, then Stacey Abrams developed this program because there has been an ongoing effort to make it even harder to register to vote. Now we also have in Europe, and I see these parallels, that often you turn, well, in most countries, in Germany definitely, you turn 18 and you're automatically registered to vote. That's also not the case in the US, where usually registration needs to be done. It's an extra step once you turn 18. This is also different according to state. And in Michigan, actually by ballot initiative, by direct democracy, we passed just 2 years ago during the midterms a new law that now at 18 you're automatically registered to vote. And we have new systems in place where you can request an absentee ballot much easier than you have in the past, where you needed to actually put a reason why you want to vote by postal mail. And so I see these in my work, my daily work, and then also in my reflecting to my background, my origins, and then exchanging with friends at home, these strong parallels, but also contrasts, and the reasons for such programs. So we have these programs across the board, but the reasons for them and the target group are different in the US and here in Europe. We didn't talk about it too much in detail, but another role of the media, and definitely in the US, this has been now in a election season, more and more important, is that the media functions as a watchdog over power. It's really holding governments and institutions accountable and candidates themselves. So we know that in 2016, when Donald Trump first ran for office, he received really extraordinary amount of attention in the media. They amount his coverage in the media to really billions of dollars worth of free media coverage, and it was really much more focused on his rallies, on his controversial statements, and unfortunately it amplified his campaign, and it didn't scrutinize it enough. And I see the difference this year. I really have to say, I think media has learned its lesson with this, that now in 2024 we see that outlets are much more vigilant in fact-checking candidates, but especially Donald Trump, who really spews misinformation after misinformation. And they're doing this, importantly, in real time. If you saw any of the highlights of the debate last night, the moderators, they didn't do this in 2016 to this extent. The moderators really responded to Donald Trump's fake statements and said, actually, that's just not true. When Donald Trump said there are abortions taking place after the birth of the baby, and they said in all 50 states, this is definitely illegal, this is infanticide. So, and they stepped in to say that. That wasn't the case. I didn't see this to this extent in 2016. So I think that they're also realizing, the media is realizing their important role that they have in acting as a watchdog. One thing I have to say, I'm surprised in this super election year. I started the year with a lot more concern, which didn't come to the surface gladly. But I thought that we would have a much bigger threat, or we would see the threat bigger, of deepfakes and AI-generated content, which of course is out there. But again, because we are fact-checking in real time, and that we have like really implemented improved verification systems, and that media is acting as a watchdog much more proactively, I think that this hasn't really come to the surface in the way that I feared in the beginning of the year. I thought this would become much more of a problem. So this is a glimpse of hope, I think, for the future, as we see the future of AI developing much more, and deepfakes are definitely here to stay, and they will only get better with time. And so media will just have to, the solution for that is media, also civil society organizations, and the entire democratic institutions will just have to adapt. We'll have to adapt, and also actually at a more quickly pace than we're doing it now. But I do see these glimpses of hope and, well, relief, let me also say. Last thing I maybe also want to mention is the role of the media. It also has, and this is, I think, in the US the case a lot more, is that it's framing political narratives a lot more. That's really, they're looking at how an issue is framed, and this is what they're also reporting to the public. So we have this scandal versus policy approach. I think the US sometimes take much more the scandal approach. We know, and again, there are a lot of lessons learned from 2016, so I think that there's been always an improvement in learning. But in 2016, the days before the election, the Hillary Clinton and Trump election, which are the most critical days, or those days, because undecided voters who make the difference are deciding in those very days. The headlines that were dominated was the Hillary Clinton email controversy, which where the FBI said that they were opening an investigation into this private email, which ended up being, well, it was a nothing burger, but it dominated headlines instead of looking at policy, which is what should be done then in the days before, and also the last-minute voter education and assistance programs. So I think there's been a lot of lessons learned, and we, in the US, we really thrive, unfortunately, off of this sensationalism and breaking news headlines, and I see that this is such a difference in Europe. I think while the US is much more highly personality-driven kind of coverage, I see the EU is much more party platform and policy driven. We see that with the EU elections that just took place in June, which was the second biggest democratic exercise in the world, and you couldn't even ask. I think even let's not say the average voter, but even the well-informed voter who the Spitzenkandidat was of the different parties and the political groups. But they can tell you the party platforms. They can tell you what issues that the Green Party is going to fight for, and what the Social Democrats are going to fight for. But this focus on personality is not there as much. Of course, at EU level, things are also a little bit different. So people really put the EU party politics in a more national context. And one thing that we also see, of course, very important that news outlets are doing in the US, especially these days before the elections, is polling. And how polling works is also very different in the US and compared to the EU. In the US, now media outlets are conducting this daily, so we are every day hearing a new poll that is coming out, and campaigns really have the chance to adapt to that, and they're changing to that, and changing then their target group and creating micro targets out of those results. Where I see in the EU, really the approach varies by country, but it's done very nationally. Of course, for the European elections, polls were done in 27 different member states. We didn't really see a EU-wide level polling. And even the polling mechanisms, really it's done by telephone, is much more popular here in Europe, or in South and in Eastern Europe. It's also more done face-to-face interviews, where in the US we're moving more and more towards online polling. That's major news outlets are the ones that are carrying that out. So maybe just the final thing to also say that I think that when we're talking about the future of the media and the role of the media, journalism, of course, is here to stay, and the role of it is even more and more important, because we are seeing a rise of misinformation and disinformation, but we're also seeing positive glimpses that they are adapting. They're moving towards that. And there was much more to criticize in the approaches of this in 2016. I think nobody expected that would be maybe one of the low points of our democracy, the year of Trump was elected, but also Brexit happened, which was really that campaign was fueled by misinformation. And so I think that there has been these last years since that low point, since 2016, has been really a learning curve for media, and I think we're moving towards also really bottom-up media with the rise of with social media. To make a quick point on it, is that it helped democratize. It's really helping our democracy and democratizing media, because it's, instead of having a top-down approach, which is also often based in fact, right, and also much more trustworthy, we are seeing bottom-up generated content, meaning really anyone can now also take the role of a grassroots journalist and report perspectives and opinions and what is happening on situations on the ground. So it's helping us make information a lot more accessible. Then really last point just to say in this, to bring in the election in the US, the Kamala Harris campaign has really worked on this social media aspect, I think, since the Barack Obama campaign in 2008, where social media has become the first time has really taken a role in presidential elections. We see that Kamala Harris campaign has really enhanced this. TikToks are creating themselves; they're generating themselves because the users there. And for the first time, I'm on TikTok to see what is happening. But Gen Z is really creating these memes and these audios and trending videos, and the Kamala Harris campaign is also using them. So we really see also a bottom-up approach to campaigning and social media campaigning, which is reaching a wider audience. It's not that the Kamala Harris campaign has to produce so much material. There's so much already out there, and they're just reusing it. So Gen Z is doing a great service to the Kamala Harris campaign, and we see that also, that since these dynamics in the campaign have changed. It's a very short campaign with Kamala Harris, that Gen Z has taken it's been a massive increase of involvement since Joe Biden decided to drop out and Kamala Harris stepped in, and we see that with the content that they are creating. So we have a lot of moving pieces and still just 55 days to go, but I have to say I'm positive for the first time all year on this.
Thank you. Yes, that's nice that you're positive, and I think it's very interesting to listen to you about your observations about how the media has a role in this debate and in this campaign. I mean, one more explicit role of media is also, let's say, checking and investigating the electoral processes, where, I mean, in 2016 and 2020, this creation of the idea of voter, manipulation of voters, of the results. Do you feel this has become better? I mean, we have here in Switzerland currently also a big controversy after media investigations into signature gathering campaigns, which have discovered many problems with that, with paid signature gatherers. Do you see there that media has become much more prepared for this in this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had a challenge with this 4 years ago in the 2020 election, because we saw in the US a rise of absentee voters. We typically had much more the culture of going to vote on election day, or in the states that have early voting, but going in person to vote. And we're moving much more. I mean, that's also thanks to the COVID pandemic, that people are voting now on their own time. So that means that we have an increase in voter turnout, because there's increase in awareness about voter absentee programs and voting by postal mail, which in places like Germany is the norm. But this is a relatively new practice in the US, in a culture where we vote in person. At least my parents, for the first time in their lives, are now voting absentee ballot too, and that's the case with also many friends and people that have always just gone to vote in person. Now, at the time, this was highly challenged in 2000 and 2020, also by the Trump campaign, saying that these are fake votes, that they cannot be trusted, but voting by postal mail, because we saw that it took longer, of course, to count those votes. So if we remember 4 years ago, that the results took a few days to come in. It wasn't as quick as we have often had. But this is something, and I didn't talk about it too much, but I'm also involved with the Democrats Abroad in Germany, and we do voter education for Americans living abroad, for the many millions that live abroad and have the right to vote, because you never lose the right to vote in the US, no matter where you live in the world or for how long. And we have only done postal voting. When you live abroad, we only vote absentee. That's how we vote from abroad. And so it's on one side a little bit funny then to hear the Trump campaign call this voter fraud, when it's a practice that has been there actually forever, and millions of Americans that you vote from abroad, that's the way that they do it. This is the way that it's done. And so I think that there's the dust has settled on this topic, and this is something that we're going to see used more and more, is the absentee voting, which has helped also increase voter turnout, because it's making elections much more accessible. People can vote on their own time, and that's something that also the media has stepped in and say that this is a secure system. The voting from abroad and absentee voting, postal voting, is absolutely a secure system. It's practiced around the world, and it's nothing new. It's just used at a much more high level. So they have had I would say really the media has had a huge role in normalizing this and debunking myths that come with more new forms of voting for us.
Thank you. Between us and the break, is your last question? Yeah, please wait.
Thank you very much for this panel. I have one question or one remark, not specific to the US election, but also to the US election. I think there is one missing link, and this is the population. So we saw it now in East Germany. Although all the, let's say, traditional media, the legacy media, have put the flashlight on the danger that the AfD or the BSV will be winning, they got the majority. And we had 2016, as you mentioned it. And although all this misinformation of the Republican side, all this bullying of the voters, he got the majority. So my question or my remark or my concern is, are we in a bubble talking about democracy without thinking about those who are the voters? And maybe they do not see this kind of problem.
Thank you. I think all of you could have a very short last sentence on this question. Very important question.
Okay. Yeah, it's comment more than question. Number one, we want to speak about something differently when we speak about AI. AI is like the knife or the scissor at your home. You don't tell your child that you can kill with this scissor or you can kill with this knife. But he will discover a way of cooking or whatever he will play or cut himself. I still have the scarf from when I was a child to discover the knife. So I don't believe of right or left, or we have to be right or left. I think internet give us the opportunity to be individual shapes. We have different dimensions, as you know, like we don't just the dimension, we have third dimension, fourth dimension, sixth dimension, and this is, you can see it sometimes in the internet or the film or production. We have to create individual, because when we start to speak about fake news is something, you know, like as a liar, you have a liar in your neighborhood, how long it take to everyone will expose him. You cannot go and say, oh, this man is lying on me, this man say, you cannot do that. Same thing with the social media. When we speak about Gen Z as an example, yeah, they are active, but are they allowed to vote? Number two, we have something totally different than the voting, which is democracy. We have to speak about you know, like digital literacy or illiteracy. So there is a big issue or difficult when you have a lot of not young people, a lot of old people where they are struggling with creating an account or printing or something like that. So imagine how many victims of a scam. Same things, internet start to do a solution if you just watch like how they have hackers who's attack these people, who's scamming people, and there is now in internet there's more solution. AI, it can help. It help a lot with people with disabilities. It can help a lot, and then we have to take it in the hand of don't be afraid, because a long time ago when calculator came, teacher of math go outside protest against calculators. So I think maybe we have to check our new calculators.
Thank you. Any comment, Vesna?
Yes. Now I'm going to say a few words from the perspective of media literacy. So when we are talking about media literate person, it's all about making choices. You know, that is media literacy. We every day in our everyday lives, in our professional lives, in our political, let's say, affiliation, we make choices. But the thing is that we need to make informed, well-informed choices. This is why we need information. This is why we need quality information, true information. So when we are talking about you mentioned voters literacy, you mentioned digital literacy. It's media literacy, it's actually umbrella for all these aspects, you know. So we need to be digitally literate to access digital devices. We need to be media literate, because media are the are the ally of the political powers, you know, of the business powers at the end. So we need to be media literate in order to make right decisions.
Thank you. Konrad?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question that you posed, and about whether we're missing population and whether, you know, talking in some bubble. And I'm thinking about the sort of the Polish example, although we do follow very closely the developments in Eastern Germany. And when it comes to what really attract sort of change, as several analyses show, the results of elections. Back in 2016, when the Law and Justice came to power, there's a significant importance of these sort of social programs they promised and actually delivered. And what's interesting is that for many years, there was this sort of general political consensus of this fiscal, fiscal policy that you can't afford these kind of programs. Then they said, yeah, you can, and they did. And what the political position there, they said at first they didn't really know how to respond to this. After some time, they learned that, yeah, they have to keep it. So now the current government says they're going to change anything, they're going to keep the programs because they sort of realize that this is actually the sort of the social adjustment is something that actually the people want. And from the other side, also from the more recent elections, for example, but I think it's a similar case of a sort of a humility of the political elites that sometimes have the different views about what the population wants, and eventually it turns out the elections actually check out what the population votes, is the abortion rights. So the political elites in Poland are much more conservative actually in the society, and from the very broad spectrum, but the civic platform is much more conservative than the, as the polls show, the general society, which is much more liberal when it comes to abortion rights. And it was only after the huge, massive protests that were spread from all over the country, from not on big cities, but on small towns that hadn't seen such kind of protests since Solidarity probably, or perhaps never, that are connected to abortion rights, that the center-right, the civic platform also had to declare that, all right, yeah, we're going to deliver this as well, because now we see that this is more or less what the population wants. So if I understand your point correctly, I sort of agree that there's definitely a more space for sort of this humility on the sides on the political elites, sort of trying to understand really the reasons that might change the voting. It might seem obvious because there are a lot of research being done on a daily basis what the voters want, but it shows that there's a lot of also long-standing views on the sort of political actors that only some big events might actually change them to how the way they think.
Thank you. Yes, Daniela?
Yeah, I think we're learning in Europe the hard way that it's not enough just to lower the voting age to 16 without implementing also strong voter education programs at the same time. In Germany, we lowered the age to 16 for the EU elections, which 4 other member states already do. And we saw that young people vote either in the first or the second most popular party for the AfD. And that was also a shock because it was mainly also left-wing groups that were pushing for that, lowering the voting age. And so I think we're learning this the hard way, that the two things need to be done in parallel. We can lower the voting age, and I think we can make voting accessible, and I agree with that decision, but at the same time, we need to increase voter education programs. And that's the key word is education there, but what we want at the end of the day is that the goal is that it creates a ripple effect, because you're only reaching a certain amount of people when you do it in schools, when you do these programs in workshops, but at the end of the day, where people will learn and exchange in a space where they feel safe is around the kitchen table, around living room couch, is within their own network and their own safe spaces. And so what we want to create with these voter education programs is actually a ripple effect. It's not just to educate those people in that workshop, in that classroom. That's just the starting point. That's just step one. And at the end, we want them to continue the conversation in their own spaces. And I think we haven't gotten to that point yet. It was very quick when Germany decided it would lower the voting age, and so I think we're still working on this ripple and multiplier effect, but these two things need to be done in parallel.
Thank you very much to all of you. Your job is not done, but you already get something from us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. And yes, I think we have launched this day very powerfully, very richly, but the job is not done for you and the job is not done for us. It only starts. Maybe you briefly explain the next steps of this day.
Thank you very much. So far, yes, Bruno just said we will continue the discussions. And so first of all, now there will be a coffee break, just one floor below. And then we will go into the workshops. And so we meet here around 11:50, let's say, so that Stefanie Bosshard can give a brief introduction to how the workshops will function. Thank you.
Come back. I hope you had a good coffee break. And after spending the morning now listening to and also absorbing exciting inputs, let's get to work, I would say. The following World Coffee includes 4 workshops. The 4 workshops are happening in 4 rooms and 4 topics. And before I get to the topics and the exciting people that await you in the workshops, a bit of logistical information again. As you already heard, the World Coffee is happening in 2 parts. Part 1 will start in a few minutes, and part 2 will start after the well-deserved lunch break. And as you already know, you have been allocated to the first part of the World Cafe. You find a little number on your name tag, and it tells you the workshop where you have to go afterwards. And then please don't forget, for the second part of the World Coffee, you have to register for the workshop you want to attend in the afternoon. You can do that right beside this room on the floor 3.5. You just can go there during the lunch break and choose your workshop. Yeah, I think these were the most important. Yeah, exactly. If you have any questions, I'll be here, or also the helpers of the team, just ask them. Then back to content. In the workshops, you will have the opportunity to discuss and work on the topics with 2 experts on the field per room. We had the pleasure to have been introduced to 4 of the experts already on the panel before the break, and I now have the pleasure to introduce the other 4 distinguished experts who will be part of the workshops. I would say, please join me on stage. Perfect. A very warm welcome to you. I start with workshop 1 in room 1, and you're already sitting at the edge. So it is dedicated to the topic of the public service media and will be accompanied by Sophia Wistehube. Welcome to you. And also from Konrad Siemaszko, whom we already got to know. Sophia, you will be working today on the leading question, what are the tools that public media can use to promote democracy, and what are successful examples? You are legal counsel at the European Broadcasting Union, focusing on the issues of democracy and human rights, based in Brussels and Geneva, as far as I know. So tell us in a nutshell, what is your link to the topic? Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation. Yes, I work for the European Broadcasting Union, and I think what we're most famous for is the Eurovision Song Contest. And actually, during my research for this seminar, I found that there is a very strong correlation between how well functioning a democracy is and how popular the Eurovision Song Contest is in that particular country. I mean, this is kind of just a fun fact, but it goes back to the idea that, or it goes back to the more underlying fact that democracies are stronger in countries where public service media is also very strong. So at the EBU, we work to support, we are an association of public service media, and we work to support our members in all kinds of ways, mostly technology innovation and sharing news content across all of Europe, bringing local stories not just to very local communities at a regional level, but also across boundaries in Europe. So bringing together a more European perspective, for instance, that's one of the main work streams at the EBU. One could say we are the biggest newsroom in the world. And at the Legal and Policy Department, where I work specifically, we work on legislation and policy. And there, one of the major focuses is obviously also how to strengthen media independence and media freedom. We've had the European Media Freedom Act, which was a major piece of legislation for us, where we have been very influential. We also work on a lot of cross-sectoral legislation, which is becoming more and more important for regulating media, such as the Digital Services Act or even the AI Act, and other kinds of international standards and conventions, etc., laying more the groundwork for what is then, how media is then being regulated and how media freedom is being implemented at the domestic level. So so I think I will try to bring some of that background to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Then to workshop 2 in room 2. It is dedicated to the very much discussed topic of social media and will be accompanied by you, Daniel Vogler, and Firas Shamsan. We already know him from the panel before. Daniel, you will be working on a leading question, how can social media be used effectively in support of democratization efforts in difficult political environments? You are head of research at and deputy director at the VÖG, the Research Center for Public Sphere and Society based in Zurich, Switzerland. And also probably in a nutshell, in 30 seconds, what is your link to the topic?
Yes, at the VÖG, we of course, our research focuses basically on media and journalism and democracy, like what are implications of news, media consumption on democracy. And you can't overlook the fact that something changed in the last 20 years, and social media is one of the new technologies that came along with digitization. And we as researchers, as a researcher, are of course interested in what are these implications of social media for democracy, like political participation or dialogue. And this is actually what I look at when it makes a large part of my research actually focuses on new media, new technology, and what the effects are on democracy. And I hope to bring in some insights and not only problem diagnosis, but also some solutions.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'll just pass it to you. Then workshop 3 in room 3, dedicated to the topic of media literacy. We already heard something about that, accompanied by you, Markus Spielmann, and Vesna, whom we already know. Markus, you will be working on the question, what is meaningful media literacy and what does it involve? You are operating director of the initiative Use the News, Switzerland, and tell us, what does you connect to the topic of the workshop?
First, maybe Use the News, to elaborate that a little bit, is a cooperation between the Swiss national broadcaster, SRG SSR, Public Value, the news agency, the Swiss news agency, Keystone SDR, and the Association of the Private Publisher here in Switzerland. So they formed an association, Use the News, based on the Use the News initiative in Germany. And the aim is to bolster media news literacy, especially for youth, for pupils, but also for the broader population. So, and that's what I'm actually doing, apart from doing a lot of other things. I'm a former journalist, former media manager, and my connection to the topic is, after ending my, let's say, the journalistic career, I invest my time into the field of media literacy, media safety for journalists. I was chairman of the board of the International Press Institute in Vienna. I was president of the Swiss Ethical Commission for Journalism. And I'm currently a member of the Federal Commission for Media Policy. So I have a lot of touch points with the topic. I'm very interested in the field of let's say, media literacy and the development of journalism and media as a whole. And to end with, I invented or co-invented a workshop which is conducted here in the Polit-Forum or here in the K-Victum in Bern for primary schools and secondary schools, which aims also to give the pupils, the schools, an insight how journalism works nowadays.
Thank you very much, Markus. Then last but not least, not at all, workshop 4 in room 4, dedicated to the very hot topic at the moment, role of media in elections and votings. This workshop is accompanied by Ruslan Michalewski and Daniela Vancic, whom we already know. And Ruslan, you will be working on the question around the media's influence on elections and votes. You are coming the longer way of Moldova, and you are board member of the Audiovisual Council of Moldova. Tell us, what is your link? What brings you to the topic?
Hello, thank you for inviting me here today. So, I have spent above 20 years in Moldovan local print and online media, and I have covered more than 10, I think, electoral campaigns in our country. All these years I promoted the idea of fact-based and honest journalism. Maybe it's not in monkey style, but also I think we created value on local level. Today, you told about this, I am a member of the Visual Council and we are preparing to monitor our media on the way how they will cover these elections. We have presidential elections, and a key part of this election process is referendum. This referendum will put the question about if our citizens want to join the European Union. So it's a crucial moment for our country, I think, and the role of media is very, very important. So I'm looking forward to discuss with you this role of media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruslan. So much knowledge is gathered here. I'm really looking forward to the outcomes of the workshops. Talked enough. Let's start. I now have to read the rooms that I don't say something wrong. I would now kindly ask you to go to the right rooms. Everyone with a 1 on its name tag. Please follow the moderator, Bruno Kaufmann, who is standing there, down to the first floor to the room 1. And then all those with a 2 follow Jeremy Schmidt. Who is he? Where is he? There. Very good. Follow Jeremy to the second floor to the room 2. Those for the third workshop may follow Benjamin. Oh, he's here in the door, just right next to the next floor. It's the floor 3.5. And all those with the number 4 follow Tom Berger to the 5th floor. It's also, you can leave it through here and have a good workshop.
Okay, so welcome back. The group diminished a little bit, but probably people were tired from working so intensively. So I hope you had some fruitful exchanges in the 2 rounds of workshops. And so the goal of this session is to share. Do we have some other visitors who would like to participate? So in this session, we would like to share the discussions of the 4 workshops in the plenary, and then also that each of the 4 workshops kind of like highlights one tool that was identified. I know this might maybe be hard to just concentrate on one tool. And then afterwards, I would also invite all of you to also collect your reactions, and you can also add further inputs from your workshops where you were in or other things that came up to your mind. So let's turn around the order of sequence and start with room number 4 and the role of media in elections and votings and possible learnings from the 2024 super election year. Ruslan, you had the workshop together with Daniela, who brought in her experiences and knowledge about the elections in the United States, but also in the European Union. And you mentioned it before in the morning. Moldova also has presidential elections on October 20th, and the US will vote on November 5th. So do you see any
second round?
Second round for your elections.
Could be.
And the first one is September already?
No, on October. In
October 1st, yeah, okay. So we are about, in both countries, a bit more than a month before the elections. Do you see any similarities now between the situation in the US and Moldova, for example, on the topic of external influences or also disinformation, which was also a topic of today's conference?
So there are, we can say that a very big difference between our systems. American system is well-established democracy. We are still in a transition period. So it's difficult to compare, but I see some similarities. For example, strong polarization of society. So if we are talking about United States, so last years there are a lot of discussions about polarization in the United States. And as for Moldova, our polarization lasts since gaining our independence. So our society is divided almost 33 years on different topics, almost on everything: national identity, geopolitical orientation. So it's a very difficult situation in this field. And another similarity is, I think, foreign influence, but we feel it in more evident way. So we are closer to Russia. Russia is the most prominent force trying to influence Moldova at the moment. United States, it's a big and strong country, so influence maybe we cannot compare, but still it exists. You know that campaigns, disinformation campaigns of to trying to influence public opinion exist in the United States. We read some stuff about this last period, but also in Moldova we have a huge influence, Russian influence on media, Russian influence on political system. So we are talking about, you know, that we don't have, so we are very close to war in Ukraine. This war is very close to our borders. But maybe we don't have like a classical war, traditional war, but we have hybrid war, which is more complicated, more, you know, more complicated to combat, to counter. So it's political corruption, media influence, propaganda, and disinformation campaigns. And I should say that inside people who initiate these campaigns are very inventive to provide such campaigns. It's very difficult to counter disinformation in condition of small country with limited human resources, with limited weak state bodies, but we are trying to face these challenges.
And so these challenges are also discussed in the United States and also in European countries. Do you have maybe, unfortunately you have this experience for a long time, as you just said. Is there something that you think European or the United States could learn from Moldova to counter this?
It's difficult to say about what you can learn from Moldovan experience. So resistance and optimism, I think, it's the most important feature in our case, because when you are small, without many resources, you are dependent on energy, on economy issues. It's very difficult, but we struggle. And we want to be democratic. We want to fight for our democratic institutions. So this is a lesson to be a bit more optimistic and trying to counter these disinformation campaigns and trying to influence to put under control your democratic institutions or undermine these institutions.
So in the workshop, it was also the idea to identify some tools to actually use the media in a way to guarantee free and fair elections and also to provide information. So what was maybe the main topic that you discussed, or also you can also just focus on the to highlight one tool that you discussed. You can see the tools here on room 4. I mean, those who are sitting in the back, you can also move forward if you want to see it a bit closer, or you can look at it later on. And the ones, the people watching us online, we have it in the presentation. I should just
so I would outline the issue, the challenge, but the main challenge, I think, one of these, and the tools and how media can address this challenge. So I think the most important problem, I put it on the first place, low civic education and media literacy. And that's why very important media to contribute to on this topic, because I think media can make a lot of education and explanatory field. For example, explanatory journalistic materials about electoral platforms and voting process. Maybe media can provide also help to provide media literacy campaigns. These activities may be diverse, but important is media to fulfill this mission, explanatory and educational mission, not only to provide information, not only to entertain. So the idea, the tool is to promote civic education, media literacy, and citizen participation. It's for this topic, it's the most interesting thing, most important in our opinion, because it's strongly related to the voting and elections at this period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any one of the participants, doesn't matter if you were in the workshop with Ruslan or not, share some other thoughts or something that you took from the workshop? Milena will come with the microphone. Okay, good. So we can go to the next topic. This is the topic of promoting media literacy. We already just talked about it briefly. I just take this down to have the new tools here. Markus, you presented yourself in the morning, and you are the operating director of the recently launched initiative Use the News in Switzerland, and together with Vesna from the Macedonian Institute for Media, you discussed the question, what is meaningful literacy, media literacy, and what does it involve? So from your perspective, just as a general question, compared to North Macedonia, are there similar approaches in media literacy in Switzerland as in North Macedonia to foster media literacy, or did you see no similarities between the two countries? Or
where is Vesna? Ah, there. No, I have to admit that I think that North Macedonia is more developed than Switzerland in this very respect. So I think they succeeded already in bringing back the non-formal programs as we conducted here in Switzerland into the formal sector. So I think that's a very impressive step. I wonder if that's possible in Switzerland with 26 cantons and I think 26 different Lernplan. But I think that's exactly what should happen from my perspective. So to build in the formal education system media literacy as a teaching issue, and because then you have the spread out of the concept. And I think that's not yet, I mean, let me correct me, I think that's not yet the case in Switzerland.
Yeah, it's more on the engagement of initiatives or teachers that are really involved to, for example, send their school
at
kids
least
to a workshop.
In the first formal educational levels. I mean, on the higher levels, it may look a little bit different, but then it is based on the initiative of teachers, and it's more by chance that you get it.
So let's come to your workshop. Would you like to share with us what was maybe the main focus of discussion and what was the highlight of the the tools identified.
Yeah, I wonder if there are tools. I would more talk about concepts and methods. I think what I just mentioned, that was one, or is one, maybe one takeaway for me as well. We have to try to reach out with the topic to the broader population. I mean, we can do it mushroom-wise, but I think we have to concentrate and to cluster all the initiative to get the effects we need for the future. I think that, from my perspective, that is one takeaway I took out of the discussion, especially because of the example of North Macedonia. Secondly, that we agreed, I think, in both discussion round, that it is not made by a one shot. It is a lifelong thing. So it has to be an ongoing and a constant debate about the necessity and also about the accessibility to media literacy in the broader sense. It's not done with we have 2 hours as a primary school and then it's done. So a lifelong learning, as it is written down here. What we also discussed, and I think that's also a very interesting point, and it is also a takeaway for especially for media managers here in the room and journalists, if there are. Are there journalists here, actually? Oh, yeah, sorry, Bruno.
At least one. Maybe
and
the left.
And he works for the public radio. So, no, but I mean, we discussed that we have also an issue that media literacy is not only media literacy for the population; it's also media literacy for the journalists themselves. And I think that's really it was really a good thought and a fruitful discussion, because I think really we have an issue also with the journalists themselves. It is what you just told. I think it is part of the duty of the media industry to do more for media literacy because of business reasons. I mean, you have to educate people that they understand what you are selling them. But it's not done with that, because you have also maybe changed the attitudes, also the narratives, also the distribution channel to reach out to all the relevant target groups in the digital age. And I think especially the legacy media have still a lot of challenges to reach out to all these target groups, not only in the sense of the youth, but also in the sense of women, in the sense of the diversity issue, minorities, etc., etc. Then what else? Yeah, defining is at a concept. I think it's not. It should not become. That was a little bit. We had a lively discussion about this. It should not become a mission. I mean, not a mission in a political sense. Media literacy should be. I frame it in my words. It should be not. It should be a concept. It should not be a mission to convince people what is right and what is wrong. They should be educated to think about what could be right and what could be wrong. They should have the skills, the competences to judge for themselves and do the necessary reflection about what do I believe. But it should not aim at we tell you what you should think, because then we are back in the bubble and where we came from. And I think one of the big issue, not only in the United States but also in Europe, even also in Switzerland in a way, is that we come from a world where a bunch of people, call it journalists, decided what the population, the consumer, have to think. And I think that's over. That concept doesn't work anymore. We are now in the jungle. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody can distribute his opinion or her opinion. And I think it's more than ever necessary to teach and to educate people how can I, for myself, form my opinion. And I think I think that should be the core of the concept of media literacy, which is difficult, understandable, but it should be. That should be, in a way, the main focus on what we are doing and discussing. So that's. There is a second page.
No, but now we just discussing the tools and not the challenges, because I mean, if there's a main challenge, I think you already mentioned it now, that people are kind of missing the capacities or also the education to actually be able to form their opinion with all the different opinions distributed. So.
Yeah, and I mean, one last thing maybe, or one last discussion point, and I think we do not have really an answer for that, or we didn't elaborate an instrument or tool for that, that we have to take care of. We are in a bubble here. We are all part of, so let's call it an elite. We are intellectual, we are well educated, we have access, we have the sources to get access to, and that's not the average. And I think we should take care that we address the average with what we are doing, and it should be that is I think that's a really that's a and this is a task of the civil society to and it results into the question, how can it strengthen democracy? So we do have an obligation to reach out to all these people which are not maybe interested in the concept of media literacy, which are not interested into news, which are news deprived or whatever, and nevertheless we should address exactly these groups, because if we lose them, we lose them also for, or we risk to lose them for the democracy, because they get frustrated, they are not anymore interested, they don't think they have a participation, a chance of participation, they feel not integrated. And I think that's the big risk for the democracy, and it starts with how well they are informed and how good have they access to information. And I think that's also a task we have to really to tackle and to think about how can we manage that in the coming years.
Thank you very much. Any comments, additions, or questions? Yes, the microphone is coming. Please.
I'm Biljana Janeva. I'm also coming from Macedonia, but in a different organization called Ohrid Institute. I agree with everything what you said, and I really believe that education is cornerstone for and unifying force for all of the topics that we discussed and the workshops that we had today. I just have one to share an experience that we had. We thought that it's a good idea to pilot media literacy for politicians. So because politicians come from various professions and not necessarily are educated, but they are heavily using the tools. And we piloted this project where we just provided basic education, and we saw that there is a demand. And there is practically no education provided for politically active people, young people or seniors, which are in politics and practicing daily politics. And it's all just experimental for them. I mean, they're practicing it without knowing the basics. And it was very important to teach them that it's a responsibility and accountability moment when they use, especially in politics, social media and all kinds of media and disinformation especially. We have had hate speech, very, very big issues with also hate crimes. So this was a key for us, and we continued for years doing it, and we're still doing it. But just for the audience to share that it should be also, I didn't get to be on this panel, but it should be also put as a probable activity.
Thank you very much for this edition. Any other questions, remarks? Good. So we go to the next room, to social media. Daniel, you are the head of research, amongst others, at the Research Center for the Public Sphere and Society at the University of Zurich, and together with Firas Shamsan, who's more from the practical side, a practitioner, you discussed the question on how social media can be used effectively to support democratization efforts also in political difficult environments. How did your research and findings maybe correspond or relate to the experiences of Firas? Do you have any?
Actually, it was super interesting because we have totally different perspectives, but I think the workshop profited from this. I can elaborate afterwards when we go to the tools that we came with total different approaches, and so this was really a fruitful discussion because we, from the researchers' side, are always more. Our core business is more like the problem diagnosis, and the practitioners then are maybe also left a bit alone with how to implement this or how to how the research findings relate to practice. We also discussed a lot that a lot of things we know about social media from the practitioner's perspective and the research perspective are not so clear. Like there's always a bright and a dark side to both to a lot of topics, like it's free speech and on the other hand it's hate speech. How does this correspond? If we regulate things, then we have then freedom of speech is endangered. So a lot of challenges we identified have a different, also have an opportunity. And I think the practitioner's perspective, especially for Firas, was more a more positive perspective on social media, whereas the research perspective, even though I'm not a pessimist, is more like a more concerned perspective. And he had really good examples, also practical examples from regions in the world which maybe have not so or imperfect or more challenging environments or for democracies, even though I would also argue that even though the question is challenging environments for democracy, I could also argue that in Western countries we have challenging environments for democracy, but hearing also from countries where it's forbidden to post about different certain topics is it really also opened my eyes. And as a researcher, I can always only stress that all the findings we find out are super context dependent. What is true for Switzerland might not be true for Yemen, and what's found out in the US is certainly not applicable to Switzerland. So practitioner perspective and academic perspective blended really well together, even though we had a bit of struggle at the beginning.
Thank you, Mer. So let's go to more to your discussion and also maybe the tools that you identified. What maybe struck mostly with you after these discussions?
When we think of social media and democracy, I think this is the core of a lot of discussion that's going on, and I think we all are worried about the current state of democracy, and social media is blamed for a lot of bad things that are happening. And we agreed platforms are flawed, Algorithms are intransparent, like power structures should be analyzed, but social media are definitely here to stay. So we should try to use them in a good way and also try to improve them. And in the end, we came up with like tools. I think we should think of it as like a process. A colleague of mine, he once said there's a good example, like there's not one law for cars. We had like 100 years to learn how to cope with this technology, and you have to do a driving license, motors have to be approved, you have like benchmarks for pollution, and I think this is also a way we should try to tackle social media, like in a governance framework, let's say, where there's different tweaks and things we can do and different tools we can apply. And what we came up with, and I think we can just repeat this, is a really key literacy. And I would just, a few thoughts on this as well. I think it's a key factor to empower citizens to use social media in a responsible way. And I mean, with empower, it's not the idea that the state should like educate or only media should educate. Again, it should be like as you also said, it's like a comprehensive like approach. We should learn as consumers, but also as producers, to use social media in a responsible way. And literacy in school is certainly something we discussed, but I have one thought about this. Usually when you do a research project and you have like, what are the implications, and you say, improve literacy, do it at school. And I think this is a huge challenge, because then school has to do everything. And actually I know that there is media literacy in the curriculum, but it's totally open. It's like they learn how to turn on a computer. They also, like, the policeman comes and tells them what they're not allowed to post on social media. And then there's also like, then news media should be a part, and AI literacy and disinformation literacy, all this stuff. It can't, like, this is a really challenging, that a lot of recommendations go to the school, and I mean, I think there's 30 lessons at school. Math is important, learning French and German is important, and also media literacy is important. So this is an opportunity, but at the same time, it's also difficult to implement. Aspect. And for one part, it came out of the practical discussion, which is a different aspect, which it was a little like surprising for me also, is like the idea that we as users are at the same time, like we call like ambassadors for democracy, or selling the ideas of democracy. And this was also more like Firas' idea, or we had a few experiences, a person who was in Iran and was posting about ideas of democracy in Switzerland, and suddenly had a lot of followers in Iran. So I think this is also an important aspect, that we as users can also help to promote the idea of democracy, and in a global perspective. And of course, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but Firas had a really good example to this, and I think this was something that was more like something I didn't think of when I entered this workshop. Maybe one last thing, with this a typical academic perspective about causality and correlation. We often say good discussions and good debates in the media and on social media will improve democracy, but at the same time, a lot of troubles we have in debate when it comes to hate speech or polarization are actually more, I could argue, more the effect of a not functioning democratic system. So we should also invest in like things like civic education, like teaching or fascinating people for democracy at school or in other places. So it's both, like, it's a typical, in German it's the hen and the egg problem, like, is it democracy that will improve when we have better debates, or can also good democracy improve debates? So that's just a food for thought at the end of a statement.
Thank you very much. Any comments, additions? Also, of course, I forgot to mention, the panelists can, of course, also react on the discussions of the other workshops if there's anything. Yeah.
I have a question concerning, you mentioned the driving license which was invented to drive a car. Should we have some kind of driving license to access social media as well?
I don't think it should go this far, but I think there already are rules that I think you're not allowed to set up an Instagram account if you're not 12, or I think there's like age limits to setting up accounts. I'm not quite sure if it is the case, and I wouldn't go like we need this formal license to use social media, but more the general idea that we won't have a solution like we regulate it and then the system is fixed. I think it should be a comprehensive framework, and it was more an analogy for the car example. But maybe there's also like we do a cycling test at school. I think you're allowed to drive a bicycle even without this test. It's more like I know this from my school time. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
Now I have this bicycle test, even though it wasn't like the state never asked me to.
I didn't sleep actually before. Yeah, it was.
And maybe these things like this, where it's like a test, or I also know because my wife's a teacher that when the policeman comes to school, this is a big thing. This is like authority, and maybe we should have similar ideas about not only the policeman showing the bad things of, like, you're not allowed to post nude pictures of your peers, but also have someone come to school and tell them like this is how democracy works and this is how media works. And I know there's a lot of engagement by teachers who do this, but it's highly dependent on if the teacher has the time and the interest and the resources to do it. So it's not like universally applied.
Thank you. Any more comments, questions? No? Yeah, sure.
Driving license, I was in that panel, but we have in the penal law, there's a anti-hate speech, anti-hate crime article, and then you have anti-discrimination in another law. You have probably some economic monopoly, anti-monopoly or whatever. So it is already a groundwork. It is some kind of regulation in place, and it's like the driving, the car thing. It's in many different laws, but are we there yet? Not yet, right?
I think it's a process, and technology evolves, car evolves, new regulations take place, scandals take place, and empower new regulation or make regulations possible.
Thank you very much. If there are no further comments, let's move to the last or first workshop, if I manage. Public service media. Sophia, you are a legal counsel at the European Broadcasting Union, and you brought in the European and also trans-European perspective in the workshop, and you participated together with Konrad from Poland, and your leading question was about which tools public service media can use to promote democracy and what might be successful examples. So from a European Broadcasting Union perspective, was there something that you found especially interesting in the discussions, or maybe did you learn a new aspect also from the example maybe from Poland, how the public service is being, if I may say, reconstructed or reformed on a personal level? Or
nothing new, but maybe that's a good thing.
So you're well informed.
So I'm doing my job. And obviously we're following Poland very closely and working very closely with our member and the Polish government and EU policymakers on aspects of the reform. And I think it also was very reassuring to see that in the discussion it's really the old and main topics that are core to public service media that have also occupied our discussions. So that's independence and trust, I think. Those are the two main issues that our members, they are tackling with on a daily basis. It's a little bit removed maybe from my day-to-day work because I work more in a future-looking way on like things like platform regulation and AI regulation, and how will that affect the media. 10 years from now, and how should we set the guardrails for these kinds of developments. But I think it was very good and reassuring to see that it really all eventually comes down to independence and trust for our members. So in terms of tools,
please.
I think in terms of tools, we really, the first one, audience interaction, I think it's a very interesting one, because a lot of the time, maybe internally in the newsroom, etc., the perception is, we're just doing our job, we're reporting on the news, we're trying to make good programs, and we've done our job, so what's the problem? And I think there's a growing understanding also in our membership that it requires more, and audiences require more interaction with their PSM. I think it's a nice thing to see.
PSM?
Public service media. So with
just for the
sorry.
abbreviation sometimes.
I think it's nice to see that there is this kind of ownership in the audience, that they are requesting this interaction from the public service media, and that they want to hold their public service media accountable. I think that's a positive thing, and I think it's something that our members can definitely improve on, is expanding ways of interacting with their audiences in more direct ways. So we have a lot of examples, but they're not, let's say we're still very much in a testing phase. I think every outlet tries out a bunch of new things. We have panels with journalists where they explain what they're doing on a day-to-day basis as foreign correspondents, and how much work goes into just having a tiny snippet on the final news. And the response of the audiences is usually one where they say, okay, now I really understand much better what the difference is between what a journalist does and what I see on social media, let's say. And it increases trust. So these are just some of the things that our members do. They also, on a more institutional level, all of them, or almost all of them, publish their editorial guidelines. You have all kinds of ways of interacting with them, submitting complaints, trying to enter in various kinds of dialogues that take place over, for instance, over a year. I think both the SRF and also the German broadcasters have a kind of dialogue with their audiences every year on one specific topic. So they have a survey. I think the next topic will be Zusammenhalt, and in English that'd be community
cohesion,
social cohesion, for instance. I think that's the next topic of the SRF. So they will be running surveys, they will be doing lots of local reporting on this issue, and it will be a year-long topic that will structure the program, and they want to involve the audiences as much as possible in that. So we have a lot of different models. We have our members going to schools, trying to teach students in classes on media literacy, etc. I think the criticism we received in the room is that it is not sufficiently coherent and institutionalized, and maybe people don't fully understand how they can interact on a more regular basis with their public service media. And that's something that we could potentially improve on. And also that it should be more of a forth and back. It shouldn't be just a survey, and then you get something reflected back in the end, and it shouldn't be just people posting and not getting a response. So I think, new ways of institutionalizing this kind of dialogue, I think that's a challenge, and the new technologies and how they will be used in that context, I think that's something where, I think our members are already exploring it. It's good to hear that maybe more of that is necessary. And we are still in a testing phase. What works best? Let's see what we get away with, like what we can take away ultimately as a lesson. That's the one. I don't know if I should continue.
Maybe we can open if there are more questions or one topic that's especially interesting or some other examples? Or yeah, Daniel?
Someone else wants to go first. I had
Let's
a lot
see.
of time already.
Not for now, I think.
Okay.
I don't see any hands.
Then in our workshop, one thing we discussed was that this idea of replacing like this privately owned social media platforms by public service infrastructure. And I know there is initiatives which are linked to public service media, like the idea creating social media platform with transparent algorithms, etc. Is this something that the EBU is also following, or do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot going on in that regard. I mean, we do a lot of work goes into how to ensure that, first of all, our members' content is more prominently represented on social media platforms, how we are also engaged in building social public value recommender systems. I mean, we use those on our own platforms, but we are also engaged in broader initiatives and working with other organizations and NGOs that want to promote this idea more broadly. There's the whole question of interoperability, plugging in a public service recommender system into another kind of platform. Yes, I mean, this is a...
You know, I just
was
just
I mean,
curious
no, it's
about
definitely
question for another whole discussion.
I think
it's just the idea of, I know that the discussion is in Switzerland, for instance, about, we have this weird situation that the public service broadcaster actually goes with their content, they go where the people are on social media at the same time. This is something that I think is good as like a citizen. At the same time, we have the private media telling this is not your business. So I think it's a weird, I as a paying SRF-Gebühren, I would expect them to be on social media. So this is I just linked to this, so like so I think it's interesting that this is like in the mind of the members of the EBU, that like we have to go where the people are.
And well, there are limits. I mean, our members don't go on every platform, and that also depends on how the platform is run.
Yeah.
Yes, ultimately the idea and the mission is to reach the entire population, and social media is core for that, so we are highly dependent on social media. On the other hand, we are also being unfairly treated a lot of the time by social media outlets, so it's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
And a very complex topic, yeah.
Yeah, I think, may I add something?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we had this discussion in the Federal Media Commission as well, and I think what we see is a paradox development. We have an unbalanced dependency developing nowadays. So we have a few global acting platforms, social media platforms or distributors or whatever, absorbing all the content. And you are more and more dependent to be part of it, even if you hate it. You have to be there. And this is in contradiction with the core mission of the public service, media services. So the independence, and to safeguard the independence and the impartial accessibility to the content is one of the core raison d'être of the public service. So in a way, we have either limiting the power of the platforms by regulation, by intervention, by killing them, or or we have to enable an alternative which is functioning in the same way, that is accessible for the population, but it's impartial, it is independent, and it's not based on a profit-driven attitude, which means the algorithm, etc., has to fulfill also this kind of logic. And I think this paradox or this situation is not yet discussed yet properly, and it's not of course not at all solved. But it becomes, I think, it becomes a really urgent issue in this country, but all over Europe as well, because the dependency is growing and growing.
Yeah, and it becomes amplified by AI. So
exactly.
Now, actually, the question at the forefront of our members' strategy is whether to allow generative AI to use their content. And some say, yes, it's our mission to inform the public, and the way we can do that in the future is by, allowing generative AI to access our content, so it becomes at least factored in to the final answer that is being submitted in a search engine or in a ChatGPT. And others say, this is naive, this is too risky, we have too little control over the final output, etc. So, our members are very, in two minds on this, and I think it's also very early stages right now to decide that, but it's definitely at the forefront. And with regards to platforms and ultimately also generative AI, one of the key demands of one of the key policy asks of the EBU and our membership is what is defined as prominence for general interest content in the AVMSD. So that's the idea that general interest content, and it's a huge question of what that's supposed to be, and it's not just public service media content, definitely also includes content by commercial outlets. But that it should be, there must be measures in place that it is prominently featured on all routes of access to media content, which includes obviously social media. And I think we see this dependency, for instance, of Facebook. I mean, one day they changed their strategy and they decided that they're not going to prioritize news anymore. And all of a sudden, news just disappeared from most news feeds, even though you were following those organizations. So it's definitely, my personal view, I think very large online platforms are public spaces at this point and have to be regulated accordingly, and not just, like private actors. I mean, they're not community. They shouldn't be governed just by contract law. On the other hand, how do we, what kinds of measures can we take that don't infringe on freedom of expression and media pluralism? That's a whole other issue, and I think it's better to wait and find good solutions than do the wrong thing at the moment. And I think the issue right now is that we just don't have really great ideas about how to regulate platforms. But I think the need is there.
Yeah, and I think this will be also continued in different discussion, this specific topic. And here today we were collecting different ideas and possible approaches to different topics. Of course, there are many more topics related to media and democracy, but as we are coming to the end of the conference, unfortunately, are there any more remarks, questions, or from your side? Otherwise, I would like to invite you to also share some takeouts with us, for those who are still here. We have some QR codes. Thank you. On Slido, you can just say some takeouts and thoughts with us, because we are planning to make like some sort of like summary of today's conference, especially based on the results of the workshops. And we would like also to add to them maybe some takeouts from you personally, some quotes, so you can do this now or also later on during the apro. Yeah, there are some quotes on the screens, but they're also there on the walls, if that's easier to photograph. So yeah, I mean, the idea of the conference was to set the base for further discussions, and I'm sure we, at least at the Polit-Forum, we will also take up some of the discussions of today, especially AI will follow us too. Probably next year will be a more of a focus we will have. But now I would like to thank you very much for hosting the workshops, also to the panelists from the morning who also hosted the workshops together. And I also have a little thank you for you, Swiss Democracy Passport and some edible Democracy Tower stones, if I may call it like that.
What?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we have to make a quick change of stage. You can go back to the audience, dear panelists, and I would like to invite Bruno and Stefanie again on stage. Yeah, you can just leave it here, or you can take it off. She will take care of it. No. You have the microphones. You will get these ones. So. Now we're at the end of the conference almost. So Stefanie, this was the second edition of our jointly organized International Day of Democracy conference. We did the first one last year. What do you personally take out of today's conference, and what was maybe surprising or new to you?
I think first thing to say, I'm always fascinated and knew what you can achieve when you work together towards the same goal. And I'm thinking that related to the conference, but also to our collaboration for the conference, but also to the content. I heard so many ideas on same ways to address challenges. That I'm really looking forward what is coming out of the conference, and I know it from the last year. There were really several projects coming out of it. So that's one thought. And then related to the content, I think I'll take out new ideas how to address, let's say, old challenges in Switzerland. For example, I'm thinking about the fact that Switzerland, we are very proud of our democracy and of our political system, but in fact there is a huge lack of democracy education in Switzerland. And with democracy education, I'm including media literacy. I think it's really a huge part of democracy education, or civic education, how it's called sometimes. For example, Markus, you also mentioned this example when I heard that in Macedonia the state is obliged to foster media literacy. I really think, it could be something new for Switzerland to also to throw an eye over the borders and to go new ways in fostering media literacy and democracy education in collaborating with other countries. Yeah, I could talk for hours about this topic. The ones who know me know that. Yeah, but I will stop now. But then, Bruno, you have been engaged for democracy for many years now. For example, as a democracy journalist for Swiss Info. Is there a topic or discussion from the conference that you will follow up more deeply, maybe for a next reportage?
Sure. I mean, this day was for me extremely interesting, not just as a co-organizer and participant, but really also based on my daily experience as a lifelong journalist and as a, you can say, media provider in public service media. And also, of course, as a citizen and user of media content. So many discussions we had are so close to my what I'm doing on a daily basis. And yes, at Swiss Info, this is the international platform of the Swiss public media in 10 languages. I have had the chance to cover also many of these issues. I mean, we had beginning of a year, we had a quite comprehensive series on Taiwan, where we looked into different kind of elements, including media literacy programs in Taiwan. So there is a series about these stories. Also, I mean, when I heard about the ideas for the democracy diplomacy from the Foreign Ministry this morning, I recalled reports I made from Botswana about democracy diplomacy between Switzerland and Botswana, and also about the process of the Summit of Democracy, which was in Korea this year. These were really issues related to that. Coming up to elections now, I mean, there's very interesting happenings coming up. I mean, next month I will travel to Kazakhstan, where there will be the first referendum on the first nuclear plant. And it's a country where democracy is I would say, in an interesting situation between autocracy and democracy. And it will be very interesting to see how media, how social media, how public media will deal with this unique first popular decision, you know, they had. And so this will be very interesting. Then, of course, the US elections, where we will have a briefing tour around the election with journalists, with people who are interested in that. A one-week tour. There are 2 more spots on this tour. If somebody's interested, just come to me. And also, when we discuss in our workshop on interaction with users, I must say that I'm really, and this is maybe really something special in the Swiss case, as we have here every 8-10 years, we have now a new tradition of having a vote about public service media. There is a big interest in this kind of interaction, but I also like it, getting letters, getting comments from listeners to readers, and really basically feeling the necessity or the obligation to answer everybody. And at Swiss Info, in fact, we have institutionalized that in the forms of debates, which are 10 language wise. That means you can write it down in Arabic contribution or in Japanese, and I can answer in German or English, and we can talk to each another. And there are several of these debates I'm hosting, but many others my colleagues are hosting. So we have a continuous conversation with the audience. And I think this is really, these are fascinating opportunities and possibilities, but of course it requires time, it requires respect, and sometimes you have to say that maybe the other side is not really interested in an exchange. But I have also experienced that people who are very angry on me in the beginning become almost unknown friends after a few exchanges, because they feel I respect them, and yeah, it's really interesting. So many issues of today are basically the issues every day for me, and I'm very happy that I'm privileged to work so much on that. And I hope that this kind of event, which we've done today, we can do again, maybe with a little bit of another focus. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are all looking forward to reading from you. And there will be a lot to read, how it sounds. Super. Then Stefanie, in the morning you said at the beginning that the Democracy Tower is an open space for dialogue and discussion. And I wonder which topic out of today's conference will be taken up probably in the future program of the Tower.
Thank you. Well, I think there are many topics that could be taken up. Some we have already discussed, but of course the discussion can continue. I think the first step will be, together with creating the short summary of the conference, that we will also evaluate which topics we might take up in the next discussions in the future. I mean, we will have some discussions on the upcoming elections, for example, about the elections in Georgia and the US elections, not with a specific focus on media, but more on the election topic. And also what stuck with me also from the morning panels was also the quote that media literacy is an umbrella for so many things, and we also heard it, I think, in the takeout of the workshop. So I think this will continue to be an important aspect of the work of us at the Democracy Tower. Markus Spielmann mentioned it in the morning. We offer some workshops with journalists for school classes for now, but I think from the learnings from today, I think it would also be important to maybe think about new ways and new groups on how to reach with media literacy, and also going together into democracy education, which is what we aim to do with different aspects. And on the media topic, what we will speak about actually at the end of October will be a discussion on why at the moment so many journalists leave journalism as a profession and maybe go to communications as a more safer, sector, but also some move back. So what is the consequences of this leaving journalists for democracy? So these are just a few aspects that we might take up, but of course there are many more.
Thank you very much. I think I'll be here. Not sure about the October, but after.
You can always watch the live stream, so.
Yeah, that's true. So now we definitely have reached the end of the conference of today. It remains for me to say a big thank you to everyone, the panelists, the supporters, our partners of the IDCC. A special thank also to the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, which was a great partner in this conference. And of course, also a big thank you to all our helpers from the Swiss Democracy Foundation and the Polit-Forum Bern, who organized everything so smoothly, and the technique. I see her. I think it deserves an applause. And of course, very important also to you, to the audience. It would never happen without you. So the last thing I do now is cordially invite you to the apéro. There is at least an hour where we can spend debating and discussing a bit more down in the Democracy Bar until about 6:30. And I also invite you to explore the whole tower if you didn't do that so far. It's really nice. On the top you can listen to the Sounds of Democracy installation, and you also can enjoy the nice view. It's still bright, so I really can recommend that to you. So thank you very much and enjoy the apéro.